"Here's a gift for your wedding. Enjoy it with our son," said Mary, my mother-in-law, as she handed me a teddy bear. It was cute, but I couldn't fully appreciate it. Mary and I hadn't been getting along, so her sudden kindness was confusing. I met Tom at our gym when he kindly helped me with a tricky machine. We hit it off and soon started dating. A year later, on my birthday, he proposed. Married life with Tom has been great, but I've had some worries, especially about my relationship with his mom, Mary. When we visited his family's mansion, I was surprised by their wealth. Tom, however, is down to earth and not into extravagant spending, which I admire. My dad always stresses the importance of financial independence, so Tom's frugal mindset resonated with me. But when I finally met my in-laws, Mary seemed to dislike me from the start. She made a hurtful comment about my work as a remote worker, implying I just play on the computer all day. It stung, despite my efforts to work hard and be responsible. Childhood friend love stories sound nice, but maybe they're not so common in reality. Since Mary's mood didn't improve, we decided it was best to leave. On our way home, Tom kept apologizing to me. "I'm really sorry about my mom. She's been upset about Emily and took it out on you. I'll talk to my dad about it later." Mary's behavior made me question if marrying Tom was the right choice. But I still loved him and wasn't ready to give up easily. I made a secret vow to prove Mary wrong. After our wedding, John suggested we move into a guest house on their property. "It's been empty for years," he explained. "As you get older, it's easy to lose touch with friends. We'd love to have you nearby." Feeling uneasy, I called my mom and showed her the teddy bear. She immediately told me to get rid of it. Shocked by my mom's reaction, I hurried to the police station. "My name is Sarah. I'm 28, and I work from home. I've been happily married to Tom for a year, though we don't have kids yet." I met Tom at our gym when he kindly helped me with a tricky machine. We hit it off and soon started dating. A year later, on my birthday, he proposed. Married life with Tom has been great, but I've had some worries, especially about my relationship with his mom, Mary. When we visited his family's mansion, I was surprised by their wealth. Tom, however, is down to earth and not into extravagant spending, which I admire. My dad always stresses the importance of financial independence, so Tom's frugal mindset resonated with me. But when I finally met my in-laws, Mary seemed to dislike me from the start. She made a hurtful comment about my work as a remote worker, implying I just play on the computer all day. It stung, despite my efforts to work hard and be responsible. Childhood friend love stories sound nice, but maybe they're not so common in reality. Since Mary's mood didn't improve, we decided it was best to leave. On our way home, Tom kept apologizing to me. "I'm really sorry about my mom. She's been upset about Emily and took it out on you. I'll talk to my dad about it later." Mary's behavior made me question if marrying Tom was the right choice. But I still loved him and wasn't ready to give up easily. I made a secret vow to prove Mary wrong. After our wedding, John suggested we move into a guest house on their property. "It's been empty for years," he explained. "As you get older, it's easy to lose touch with friends. We'd love to have you nearby." The guest house was spotless and roomy, much cozier than your average home, even though it had been vacant for years. After talking it over with Tom, I accepted his dad's kind offer, but this decision brought its own set of problems. Mary, who lived nearby, started dropping by uninvited and picking at everything. She'd nitpick about the cleanliness of the house or criticize my cooking. She even belittled my remote work, saying it wasn't real work and comparing me unfavorably to Emily, Tom's ex, who apparently excelled at everything domestic. These comments always seemed to come when Tom wasn't around. At first, I tried to defend myself, but Mary was expert at twisting my words, leaving me frustrated. Eventually, I realized engaging with her only stressed me out more. So I started brushing off her remarks and letting them slide. This seemed to annoy her even more, so she began resorting to more direct forms of harassment, like hiding community newsletters from me and withholding messages from neighbors. Her actions caused me to miss important community events, which landed me in trouble. One day, as I was folding laundry, she purposely messed it up or handled it with dirty hands, leaving stains. She'd help herself to food from my fridge without asking and even opened packages I'd ordered online, criticizing me for being wasteful. When her actions started causing actual damage, I reached my breaking point. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I decided to confront Mary directly. "Enough is enough, Mary. Even if you have issues because of Emily, this is going too far. Why do you keep harassing me like this? I stood firm, arms crossed, ready to confront her. Mary seemed surprised by my determination and quickly fired back. I faced challenges as a new bride too, but I never complained to my in-laws like you do. You're quite headstrong. Once you marry into a family, shouldn't you serve and respect your husband's parents? That's how it used to be. You think it's all right to treat me this way just because you went through it as a bride? I asked, stunned. Mary's response was chillingly firm. Yes, I do, and I won't stop. I can't accept someone like you as Tom's wife. If you don't like it, just divorce him and leave. Mary's words left me speechless with disbelief. It was clear that reasoning with her was futile. I didn't want to burden Tom, but it seemed I had no other option. When I finally opened up to him about his mother's behavior, he was distressed. What is my mother thinking? I've told her countless times not to bother you, and now she's dragging the neighbors into it. Bad-mouthing is one thing, but it's unacceptable when she starts interfering with our daily lives. I'm sorry you have to deal with this. I'll have a serious talk with her. That night, Tom confronted Mary at our home. Despite her tearful protests, he stood his ground. Enough is enough. If this happens again, I won't forgive you. Thankfully, Mary stopped coming over for a while, giving us some much-needed peace. But it didn't last long. A week later, just when I thought things were settling down, the doorbell rang, and there stood Mary, wearing a wide smile. She was holding a cute teddy bear for some reason, and I couldn't quite figure out why. I thought, puzzled by the situation. Mary, what brings you here today? I asked. She seemed meek and apologetic as she responded, I'm sorry for everything. Tom scolding me made me realize how childish I was being, taking out my frustrations about Emily on you. I accepted her apology, albeit with confusion. Well, I'm glad you understand. Actually, I came to apologize properly. I realized I never gave you a proper wedding gift, so I thought this teddy bear would be nice. Isn't it cute? I wish you and Tom happiness, she said, offering me the bear. Though I thanked her, the gift didn't make much sense to me. I'm not particularly fond of teddy bears or stuffed animals in general. For a wedding gift, something practical like kitchenware or appliances would have been more appropriate, especially considering our recent conflicts. Could there be a hidden motive behind this gesture? Feeling uneasy, I decided to consult my mom, who lived nearby. I've confided in her about Mary's harassment before. When I showed her the teddy bear, her usually calm face lit up suddenly. Sarah, your dad brought some sweets as a souvenir. Let's put the teddy bear in the living room and have some coffee first. Help me get things ready, my mom said, her behavior seeming strange. Despite my unease, I went to the kitchen. As soon as I entered, my mom grabbed my shoulder with a serious expression. You need to get rid of that thing quickly. Otherwise, something terrible will happen. What? Why the sudden urgency? Is there something wrong with the teddy bear? I asked, confused. Calm down and listen. That stuffed animal is... After hearing her explanation, I was speechless at Mary's outrageous behavior. But at the same time, I ran out of patience. I understand now. Then I need to return the gesture, I said, placing the teddy bear in the living room and waiting for Tom to come home. When he saw it, he asked, Isn't it cute? Did you buy this? Welcome home. No, this is a wedding gift from your mother, I replied. From Mom? Why would she give a teddy bear? Tom asked, puzzled. I pulled him aside to explain the situation and asked for his help with my plan. He nodded in agreement. A few hours later, Tom and I found ourselves in a heated argument. You preferred Emily because she was nicer, just like your mom said. That's why you wanted to marry her, I accused him. I never said that. You're reading too much into it. Tom retorted, the argument escalating into harsh words. That's it. Marrying someone like you was a mistake. Let's get divorced right now, he declared. And just as he said that, Mary burst into our house. She stood at the doorway with a broad smile plastered on her face. Tom, you finally see the truth. She's the worst wife, strong-willed, not cute at all, and so presumptuous. I always knew she wasn't right for you. Divorce her immediately and kick her out of this house. Mary's delight quickly turned to confusion. Tom and I, who moments ago were supposedly locked in a fierce argument, now shared a cold gaze as we stared back at her. I addressed her slowly. You noticed we were fighting, didn't you? Mary stumbled in her response, attempting to cover up her timing to enter our home. It was just a hunch. I just felt it. she quickly defended, but her shifting eyes betrayed her. Don't lie. Tell the truth. You rigged a teddy bear with a surveillance camera and a bug, didn't you? I accused, revealing what my mom had noticed and told me about when I returned home. She had suspected something when she heard about Mary's gift, recalling a similar crime reported on the news involving a woman being spied on through a stuffed animal. Mary's expression froze in realization. On my way back, I went to the police station to report this. They should be arriving any minute now, I continued, watching as panic flickered across Mary's face. That's ridiculous. Don't joke about this. Calling the police over such a thing is an overreaction. Call them back and cancel it right now, she pleaded desperately. Planting cameras and listening devices in someone's home is a serious crime. It's your fault. You were so insolent that I felt I had to find something to hold over you. You are an outrageous woman. Mary tried to shift the blame, lashing out in anger. Tom finally reached his breaking point with his mother. Enough is enough. I've never been more ashamed to call you my mother. Mom, I thought you regretted mistreating Sarah, but then you pull something like this. Please don't be angry, Tom. I was doing it for you, Mary tried to explain. So committing a crime is justified. I shouldn't have been lenient just because you're my mother. I'm going to report this to Dad, and I'm cutting ties with you. Stay away from Sarah and me, Tom declared firmly. Mary began to scream, attempting to apologize through tears. Tom halted her. You're apologizing to the wrong person, he said, turning to me. Sarah, I'm sorry. I felt like I was losing Tom to you and made a foolish mistake. I deeply regret it. I won't oppose you again. Please forgive me, she pleaded desperately. But after everything she put me through, including the disturbing teddy bear incident, forgiveness was out of the question. I will never forgive you. I reached out to you multiple times and you ruined it. How could I forgive being given such a disgusting gift? Sorry might work for children, but as adults we must face the consequences of our actions, I told her firmly. Despite her continued pleas, neither Tom nor I felt any sympathy. Later the police arrived, giving her a stern warning. Weeks later, John divorced her and kicked her out of the house. Apparently, he had long been frustrated with her reckless spending. Combined with her mistreatment of me and the teddy bear incident, he had had enough. Now she lives in a run-down apartment, struggling with multiple part-time jobs, a consequence of her actions. I hope she uses this opportunity to reconsider her choices and change for the better. As for me, I'm grateful to live in peace, surrounded by the kindness of Tom and John. In just a few months, we'll be welcoming our long-awaited baby into the world. We're filled with anticipation for the day our little one arrives.
My wife's leaving for the other side tomorrow. I'll be the grieving husband, so just play along and show some pity. During our long-awaited honeymoon, I woke up in the middle of the night to hear my husband, Kevin, talking on the phone. Shocked by what I heard, I lay still in bed, holding my breath. After he finished the call, Kevin returned to bed and soon began to snore. Unintentionally, I had overheard his plans, and I couldn't stop shaking. I couldn't sleep at all, and morning came all too soon. My name is Claire Piper, a 29-year-old housewife. My husband, Kevin, for years my senior, was originally my senior at work. We hit it off because of our shared hobby of mountain climbing, and started dating soon after. After 5 years of dating, we married 3 months ago. I quit my job as he wished for me to stay home, but I had no complaints, and was enjoying our marriage. However, that happiness didn't last long. A new temp named Mandy just joined us, and she's really good at her job. Really? That's nice. At first, it was just trivial conversations like that. Today, Mandy complimented my tie. Today, Mandy helped me with overtime. Today, Mandy brought cookies she baked. Having worked at the same place, my husband often talked about his days. But gradually, he began talking about the temp, Mandy, every day. It would have been fine if it was just talk, but one day, something happened. Hello, Kevin passed out drunk. He had told me he would be late because he was drinking with colleagues. As I worried about his late return, he came home supported by Mandy. Kevin was nearly unconscious, and Mandy looked at him with an infatuated expression. I felt irritated but kept my composure and took him from her. "Sorry my husband caused you trouble." "Oh, it's not a problem. I'm forever in debt to Mr. Piper. And when he's had a few drinks, he's just so sweet and clingy." Mandy's smug smile disgusted me. I sent her home quickly, woke Kevin up, and confronted him. "Hey, you seemed pretty close with that Mandy girl, huh? What's this all of a sudden?" "It's not like that. But you're just jealous because Mandy's young. It's disgraceful." Ignoring my words, Kevin sighed and went to take a bath, which infuriated me. Our relationship became awkward after that. Kevin stopped mentioning Mandy, but I started to doubt their relationship. I hated feeling this way, especially since we were going on our honeymoon soon, so I decided to ask him bluntly about Mandy. As I started to speak, Kevin looked surprised, then started laughing. "Are you still worried about that? You've been cold since then." "That's not true. Let's make up. We're going on our honeymoon soon, after all." Kevin smiled and opened his arms wide, and I jumped into his embrace. Little did I know, a much bigger incident awaited us. "Wow, what a beautiful view." "Calm down, you're too excited." Since the day we made up, we didn't argue and safely went on our honeymoon. As it was my first trip abroad, I was overly excited just by the view from the hotel window. "What are we doing today? Look at this." "What?" I made a travel itinerary. Surprised, I took it and laughed when I saw a detailed plan for the week. "You're more excited than I am." "Shut up, I wanted to make the best memories." I felt a surge of love for my bashful husband. "Let's make this the best trip." "Wait, are we climbing a mountain tomorrow?" "Yeah, you wanted to, right?" Indeed, mountain climbing was our shared hobby. "I'm happy. I'm looking forward to it." I was so happy that Kevin remembered my casual remarks. It was surely going to be the best trip. However, my wife's leaving for the other side tomorrow, on the first day of the trip. As I fell asleep exhausted from enjoying our minutely planned schedule, a terrifying conversation reached my ears. I thought, what, the other side? I thought it was a misunderstanding, but then Kevin started talking about a horrifying plan. And I was stunned. It must be a nightmare, I thought, clutching my arms inside the blanket until it hurt slightly. I thought, it's not a dream. Realizing this was reality, my body started trembling. I hugged myself, hoping Kevin wouldn't notice I was awake. Luckily, he seemed too engrossed in his cheerful conversation with the other person. "I'll meet up with Mandy after I take care of Claire. Can't wait to see her." I even made a travel itinerary for Mandy. I thought, Mandy. He was cheating on me. Kevin was betraying me, piling up lies, and even planning to make me disappear. Unwanted truths came to light, and tears streamed down my face. Don't worry. If suddenly separated from Claire, I'll just say I've been looking for her, so we can tour together. The excitement in Kevin's voice at the prospect of meeting Mandy made me feel nauseous. The conversation went on for about an hour before he finally fell asleep. I couldn't sleep, overwhelmed by despair, and morning came. Good morning. Today's the day we've been looking forward to for our mountain climbing. Kevin, not catching on to my pale face, greeted me with a big smile. Sorry. I'm feeling unwell and don't think I can go today. What? That's a problem. Why is that a problem? Well, you were looking forward to it too, right? I want to climb too. As Kevin tried to persuade me. I bitterly thought in my mind that he was upset because his plan couldn't be carried out. How about we postpone the climbing to tomorrow? And you go sightseeing alone today? Really, is that okay? Yes. As I smiled, Kevin happily prepared to leave and departed early in the morning. I too left the hotel discreetly soon after and followed him. After a restless night, I came up with the idea to let Kevin go off on his own and see if he'd try to cheat on me. Mandy. Kevin. I've missed you. As expected, Kevin met up with Mandy. I knew he would, having heard how much he wanted to see her on the phone last night. With the video camera I brought to record our happy trip, I filmed them hugging and kissing without a care for who might see them. To my surprise, they didn't even go sightseeing but went straight into a hotel. Well, they're quite active since the morning. I recorded them entering the hotel, feeling disgusted but also having collected enough evidence of his affair. I returned to my hotel, packed my things, and took not only Kevin's passport, but also the family register certificates I brought just in case. Without the family register, he wouldn't be able to reissue his passport immediately. Thinking he should experience maximum inconvenience, I headed to the airport alone. About 7 hours later, I safely returned to the US. Having boarded the plane in the morning, I was relieved to return on the same day. When I turned on my phone, which I had kept off for a while, it was bombarded with frantic calls from Kevin, who must have realized I was missing. I skimmed through his numerous emails and another call came in. Hello? Finally, you pick up. Where the hell are you? I'm back in the US. What? Sorry, I felt bad and returned earlier. You just left on your own. Sorry about that. Kevin, you enjoy the rest of the trip. With that, I forcefully ended the call and blocked his number. Kevin's anger was likely because his plan to dispose of me was thwarted. Although his plan failed, he would probably enjoy the rest of the trip with Mandy. Fuming, I pushed my tired body and went somewhere. A month later, I received a call from my in-laws that Kevin was returning home, and I rushed to their house. As soon as I arrived, a worn-out Kevin came home. Seeing my face, he confronted me furiously. Hey! Your actions have put me through hell. Did I do something? My passport was missing. Kevin ranted about realizing on the last day that his passport was missing, and tried to reissue it but couldn't without the family register certificate, which he tried to reach me for but couldn't. Therefore, he had to ask his parents to mail the certificate, but by then, 3 weeks had passed, so instead of a new passport, he got a travel document to return home. And the house? The house is gone. Yes, while he was away, I moved out of our rented apartment and went back to my parents' home. Kevin's belongings were sent to his parents' house. You return on your own and you create a mess. What have I done to deserve this? As Kevin screamed, playing the victim, I played the video I had prepared in advance. Mandy, I love you. Oh, I love you too. What the heck is this? It was the footage of him cheating that I recorded while following him. Right after returning, I visited my in-laws. I told them everything that happened during our honeymoon and asked for their help to punish Kevin. Initially shocked, they became angrier than I and promised to support whatever I needed after seeing the footage. You still say you did nothing after seeing this? That was just us having fun on the trip. I wasn't cheating on you. Why was Mandy there in the first place? That was just a coincidence. His desperate excuses made me sigh heavily. All right, shall we ask Mandy then? Huh? Mandy? Shouldn't she be arriving soon? Right after that, as if timed, the doorbell at the in-laws' house rang. And Kevin twitched. My mother-in-law greeted the visitor and invited them into the living room, and Kevin screamed as he saw Mandy. Kevin. There were Mandy and her parents. Mandy rushed to Kevin and hugged him, tears in her eyes like a tragic heroine. Kevin, not understanding why Mandy was there, looked confused. In fact, I had informed not only my in-laws, but also Mandy's parents about the events during the trip. I got Mandy's parents' contact from a former boss at the company and had asked them to bring Mandy to the in-laws' house once she returned. Mandy, you and Kevin are in love, aren't you? Yes. We are in love, and you have always been in the way. Mandy glared at me with raised eyes. See, she says this, but you still deny it? When I asked, Kevin finally burst out. Yes. I love Mandy. How dare you claim that after cheating on me? After all, it's your fault. What? You were just jealous of how cute and young Mandy was. And that's what pushed me over the edge. Are you saying it's my fault? Yes. And taking someone's passport and returning home by yourself. That's just not right as a person. Kevin continued to rant, blaming me, until my patience finally snapped. Don't be ridiculous. If anyone's acting unacceptably, it's you. I yelled as I shoved the divorce papers at him. I want a divorce now. And I'll be taking a hefty compensation. I'll give you the divorce, but I'm not paying any compensation. What did you say? Obviously. The divorce is your fault, so you should be the one paying compensation. That's right. I'm not paying either. Not just me, but my in-laws and Mandy's parents were all too stunned to speak. See? You can't even argue back. Sigh. No, it's just too tiresome to even talk about it. Oh, by the way, your company is in the loop about your affair. What? Kevin, who had been so confident, suddenly paled. When I asked Mandy's parents for their contact information, they questioned why I needed it. So I had no choice but to tell my former boss everything. I don't think they'll fire you, but you might as well give up on any promotions. At my words, Kevin quickly apologized. I'm sorry. Please, just say the affair was a misunderstanding. I beg you. I want to advance my career. I won't divorce you, let's start over. Mandy snapped at Kevin's ridiculous plea before I could. What? What do you mean? You care more about your position at the company than me. What did you say? As the ugly argument unfolded before me, I sighed, not knowing how many times I had done so already, and made myself clear. We're getting a divorce, and I'm not explaining anything to the company. What? Could you sign the divorce papers quickly? If you refuse, I'll call the police right now. Police? You didn't think I knew? I heard you talking about pushing me off a mountain to send me to the afterlife. Kevin, not expecting that I knew about this plan, turned an even deeper shade of pale. Wow, how messed up is it that you'd even think about getting rid of me while we're hiking? Isn't that like plotting a crime or something? I mean, couldn't you end up in jail for 2 years for that? It's not true. Mandy was the one who said you were in the way and wanted to get rid of you. What, you're blaming me now? You're the one who said it'd be better if she wasn't around. Enough already. Unable to listen to them anymore, I raised my voice. So? What's it going to be? Divorce? Or shall we go to the police? I'm sorry. I'll get a divorce. I'll pay the compensation. I'm sorry too, just not the police. Both of them were groveling on the floor apologizing. And both sets of parents also apologized. I chose the wrong mountain to climb. Mandy was like a shady and risky valley my husband might end up regretting for the long run. I glanced their way and then left my in-laws' house. Afterward, I submitted the divorce papers and became officially divorced. I demanded $35,000 from my ex-husband and $15,000 from Mandy. My ex-husband paid in full using all his savings, and Mandy agreed to pay in installments. From what I heard from my in-laws, the divorce became known at the company, and he was sent to a branch office in the countryside. There had been rumors about his relationship with Mandy, and the gossip that his wife had found out and divorced him spread throughout the company, leading to his reassignment. He now spends his days in a quiet rural town, not being given any work, sitting at a desk all day. It might sound easy, but having nothing to do can be the most painful thing in the world. Mandy, who was his affair partner, didn't get her contract renewed and left the company. Her parents are furious, and she now lives under their watchful eye, without any freedom. As for me, I'm job hunting. It's been tough, but I occasionally go mountain climbing. My favorite hobby, to clear my mind and keep pushing forward. Next time, I'll make sure to pick the right mountain to climb. You're a stranger, so just be quiet and leave the money. Don't show your face again. As I was being kicked out at the entrance, my husband didn't defend me, he just smirked. I had come to my in-laws' house to help take care of my mother-in-law's injury. However, the treatment I received was quite the opposite. While using crutches, my mother-in-law greeted her son with a smile, but she gave me a cold look as if I were a bug. She ridiculed the gift I chose as cheap, and at the front door she said, "It would be trouble if a thief got in," refusing to even let me in the house. When I tried to discuss this treatment with my husband, he just brushed it off, saying, "That happens." But there was a reason for this. My husband was busy telling people I was out enjoying myself all the time. To add insult to injury, he was siphoning off a lot of my income to his mistress. The moment I learned this truth, something inside me shattered. Now, it was my turn. It was time for me to dismantle this facade of a happy family. No need for mercy or pity anymore. This was the beginning of my revenge. My name is Wendy. I lost my father when I was in high school. It was a sudden event that changed my mother's and my life completely. Although life became very tough after my father's death, I managed by attending a local community college and working multiple jobs to support us. I delivered newspapers in the morning and worked at a pub at night, squeezing in classes in between. This became my normal life. After graduating from college, I moved to the city and started working at a small to medium-sized company. Initially, I was given menial tasks, but gradually I started to handle more administrative duties. That's when I met Paul, a representative from a major company. Our relationship started from casual conversations. He was 7 years older than me, capable at his job, and kind. He took a liking to me and started inviting me out to dinner, which naturally led to us getting married. "Let's work hard together from now on." Paul's warm words filled me with hope. But, thinking about the future, I naturally felt anxious because of the hardships I experienced after my father's death. That's why I decided to continue working even after getting married. I wanted to save up a little bit for the future. The future we would build together was supposed to be bright. However, my hopes were soon crushed. I was particularly worried about my relationship with Paul's parents. The first time I felt uneasy was when I first met them before our wedding, an encounter I still can't forget. A regional community college? Well, our son graduated from a state university. Right upon entering their house, my father-in-law asked about my education and scoffed at me, belittling me immediately. I felt a deep humiliation. So you worked at that company, huh? Guess you targeted a son from a major corporation. My mother-in-law also made blatant sarcastic remarks. It seemed she had judged me from the start. The way they disregarded all my hard work was incredibly irritating. I realized instantly that I could never get along with these people. Their disdainful attitudes did not change even after the marriage. Even when visiting their home during holidays like Easter or Christmas, I was never allowed inside. What if you took our passbook or credit card? They handled everything at the entrance, preemptively treating me like a thief. Each time I stood at the entrance under the cold sky, I struggled to hold back tears. Even when I handed over sweets from a department store that I had carefully chosen, my mother-in-law just grimaced. Despite searching multiple shops to find something that might appeal to my in-laws' tastes. Did you buy this from this store? It's cheap. Choose something more expensive and tasty next time. My father-in-law nodded in agreement, showing that my feelings didn't matter to them at all. The joy I hoped to see when choosing the gift shattered in an instant. Feeling at my limit, I decided to talk to Paul. I believed he would understand my feelings. Your parents treat me like a thief. Can't you do something? It's a common thing. You're overthinking it. Paul just brushed off my concerns and didn't take them seriously. At that moment, I felt something freeze inside me. The warmth of our wedding day felt like it was drifting further away. Maybe that happiness would never return. This was my new reality. And it was suffocating. Despite my serious worries, Paul didn't take them seriously. Maybe there's something wrong with you? If you're suspected, you must have done something to deserve it. Instead of supporting me, he defended his parents. Hearing those words, I was certain Paul was not on my side. My husband and in-laws, who were supposed to be my family, felt like enemies. The happy life I had longed for had disappeared far away, leaving only a sense of loneliness. Day by day, my heart felt more consumed by this sensation. The trials waiting for me were even more cruel. After getting married, I managed our finances. Since we both worked, our combined incomes were substantial. Thinking about the future, I diligently saved money each month. But about 3 years into the marriage, things started to change. Could you increase my allowance starting next month? I had been giving Paul an allowance to ensure he wasn't short during outings or shopping. Initially, it was $500 a month, but it eventually increased to $1,000. And he began asking for more. I knew Paul worked hard, so I wasn't opposed to increasing the allowance itself, but something felt off, so I asked him, "I'm already giving you enough, but is there something you want?" He was really happy with the clothes I bought for Mom and Dad last time. "So I want to give them more gifts." "That's nice, but isn't it a bit too much?" While it wasn't strange for Paul to give gifts to his parents, I couldn't shake off a feeling of discomfort, so I probed further. If I give things to them, maybe they'll start treating you a little better, right? Indeed, my relationship with Paul's parents was terrible. If it could improve even slightly. With that thought, I agreed not to delve deeper. But deep down, something bothered me. Could so much money really be going towards gifts for his parents? This question nagged at me. It was towards the end of winter, when I received news that my mother-in-law had gone on a skiing trip with her friends. I was honestly surprised, especially since she was the one who always accused me of gallivanting around. But the very next day, everything changed. Mom fell and got hurt. She can't move now. I had a terrible feeling when I got the sudden call, and it turned out to be accurate. A few days after hearing about the injury, my father-in-law called. "Wendy, can you help take care of Mom?" According to him, my mother-in-law hadn't broken any bones, but had hurt her leg badly enough to need crutches. It seemed difficult for her to perform daily tasks around the house on crutches, and she needed help. However, my father-in-law couldn't manage alone, and wanted my help. Unfortunately, this came at a time when I had just been assigned a major project at work. As the team leader, I was in the midst of important tasks. Yet, I couldn't outright refuse my father-in-law's request and decided to make a suggestion. Should I arrange for a caregiving helper? I'll cover the costs. I thought this was the best solution. Getting professional help would be better for my mother-in-law. I immediately contracted with a reputable caregiving service and arranged for a helper to be sent. However, I never anticipated that this suggestion would infuriate my father-in-law. That night, he came pounding on my door with a furious voice. "Wendy, come out here." When I opened the door, my father-in-law glared at me with bloodshot eyes. "What's this about a caregiving helper? A daughter-in-law who can't even take care of her own parents is no use to my son." "But, my job." "Shut up. If your job is so important, then divorce Paul right now." Paul's father's yelling echoed throughout the room. Frozen in fear, I couldn't move from the spot, utterly perplexed by this incomprehensible situation. I couldn't understand why my father-in-law was so furiously angry. The mystery was soon unraveled by Paul's words. While half watching TV in the living room, he stood up, pulled me aside away from his father, and whispered so that his father couldn't hear. "I actually lied to them about you." His voice had a calculating tone I had never heard before. "A lie?" "I told them that Wendy just hangs out every day and refuses to help care for Mom." Paul spoke matter-of-factly as if it was someone else's problem. I was speechless at his absurd words. "Also, I said you've been wasting my salary, so we can't buy anything for my parents. Why would you lie about something like that?" I felt a big thump in my chest as it all clicked, why Paul's parents thought I was just out having fun and why they called me cheap. It was all because of the lies he spun. Paul apologized in a low voice, his expression feigning regret, but his eyes weren't smiling. "Sorry, but could you just keep quiet about it for now?" He then turned to face his father, suddenly acting like the obedient son. "Dad, Wendy is reflecting on her actions. Please forgive her this time." Was this man capable of trampling over me to this extent? I chose not to say anything, but dark emotions swirled inside me. My father-in-law glanced at me briefly, then left with a dismissive remark. "You were saved by your kind husband." His words shattered my heart into pieces. The husband I loved, the family I trusted. Everything crumbled in an instant. knowing that all the humiliation and tolerance I had endured stemmed from my husband's deceit. Something within me irrevocably changed. That weekend, my father-in-law called. "You can make it today, right?" His voice still carried its usual domineering tone. "There won't be a next time." His words sounded almost like a threat, and I sighed deeply. I convinced myself this would be the last time I'd endure it. With work finally settling down, I decided to visit my in-laws' home one last time, to put an end to everything. As I rode the bus, memories flashed before me like a revolving lantern, the joy of our wedding day, the first meeting with my in-laws, the humiliation at the front door, and Paul's betrayal. A strange sense of calm settled over me, feeling the end was near. I rang the doorbell, and I heard the sound of crutches approaching from inside. "Oh, Paul. It's good of you to come." My mother-in-law greeted her son with a cheerful smile. A kindness I had never seen before. It was as if she was a different person, filled with loving kindness. Her smile towards her son made the past coldness seem like a lie. However, as soon as she noticed me, her smile vanished. "Oh, you're here?" Her gaze turned icy, encapsulating all the humiliations I had endured up until now. She looked at me as if I were a bug. "You're a stranger, so just be quiet and leave the money. Don't show your face again." With a mocking tone, I was driven out. I wondered why I was even called here. It must have been just to mock me. It seemed that was my father-in-law's intention from the start. I could sense the malicious joy in his mother's voice. My father-in-law, too, was grinning as he watched me. There was no attempt from my husband to stop his wife's verbal abuse. You got what you deserved. There was no dignity or responsibility in his father-in-law's behavior. And Paul, who was supposed to be my husband, did nothing but join his parents in smirking. There wasn't a trace of affection for me in his eyes. This was the true face of the family I thought was mine. Everything became clear in that moment. "Goodbye," I said quietly but clearly. At that moment, my heart felt unexpectedly light. All the hatred, anger, and sadness seemed to clear away. I no longer had anything to fear. This was the last humiliation. If I endured this, I would be free. As I left the entrance, a new resolve solidified within me. For 3 years, I believed that enduring would bring change, but I was wrong. The illusion that forgiving would improve our relationship was something I decided to abandon here. Now it was my turn to dismantle the false happiness that family had built. I would make them pay in ways they couldn't even imagine. There was no hesitation in me anymore. In fact, I had never felt more clear-headed. Life was just beginning. I would walk my own path, determined by my own will. As I left my in-laws' home for the last time, the laughter of the 3 people behind me only strengthened my resolve. There was no turning back. Once home, I started packing my bags hastily. As I folded clothes, tears unexpectedly fell, tears of frustration, anger, and relief mixed together. 3 years of married life had accumulated memories, each filled with shattered hopes. I don't need this anymore. I threw the wedding album into the trash. I called the movers, asking them to come immediately. I arranged to have my belongings moved to my parents' house. After handing over the luggage to the movers, I also decided to return to my parents' home. Once there, I pulled an envelope from the back of the dresser. It was important paperwork my mother had entrusted to me before she passed, the deed to the house where my in-laws had been living. In fact, that house where my in-laws had lived for the past 3 years was previously owned by my mother, and after her death, I took over as the landlord. The house my in-laws were living in was actually mine. I called a lawyer and had a demand letter drafted for Paul. The total unpaid rent over the years had accumulated well over $100,000. As I placed the demand letter in the envelope, a mix of hatred and satisfaction surged within me. The in-laws who had driven me out looked down on me and mocked me. The husband who had vowed to love his wife. They had trampled on my heart while living in my mother's house. The arrogant words of my mother-in-law, "Just leave the money and never come back," were still ringing in my ears. I'll return those words exactly as they were. With a cold smile, I trembled as I dropped the demand letter into the mailbox. The sound of it falling felt oddly satisfying. Their false, happy life was starting to crumble from this moment. This was just the beginning of my revenge. 3 days after sending the demand letter, my cell phone rang. The name Paul displayed on the screen made me smile. "What is this bill? There's no way I can handle this payment." His angry voice came through the receiver, but I was not shaken at all. "You can't pay? Of course not. How can you demand such an outrageous amount all of a sudden?" "Outrageous? That's the total rent for 3 years, and honestly, I think it's a fair price." My calm response momentarily left Paul at a loss for words. Pay the back rent in full or agree to the divorce, choose one. From the other end of the phone, Paul's ragged breathing was audible. "Don't joke. There's no way I can choose either." "Then, I suppose we'll have to take legal action." "What?" "Eviction for rent arrears. It's simple through the courts." "Are you serious?" "Of course." I almost burst out laughing. Over the phone, I could hear him grinding his teeth. "I'll give you some time to think, but I won't wait long." After hanging up, Paul called back shortly after. "I've decided. I'll agree to the divorce." His voice was tinged with an unfamiliar sense of defeat. "I've sent you the divorce papers I filled out. Just sign them and file, and it's done." "Oh really? Thank you for your efforts." Though the words of comfort were insincere, Paul awkwardly started speaking again. With this, about the rent. He might have thought that saying yes to the divorce meant we could just ignore the rent he owes. But he was totally wrong if he believed that would make me happy. "Oh, you seem to be misunderstanding something." "Huh? Even if you agree to the divorce, the rent is separate. You'll continue to pay it monthly. Or would you prefer to vacate immediately?" "You be quiet and leave the money, wasn't that what your mother said?" Her words are etched in my heart. A satisfying pleasure spread through me. This is fraud. This is outright fraud. His voice, devoid of its previous arrogance, was now desperately enjoyable to hear. Fraud? I couldn't help but smile. Where is the fraud in asking for rent payment? But until now, I waived the payments out of kindness. Because there was familial pity. Over the phone, I heard Paul gasp for air. "But you all said I was a stranger, right? Then I'm entitled to claim my rights." "How can you? If you rent a house, you pay rent. That's basic common sense, even a child understands." I laced each word with venom. Rather, isn't it far more unreasonable to try to evict a landlord while living in their house? You all have been taking advantage of my goodwill. And committing acts close to fraud, haven't you? Emotions I had suppressed were now freely flowing. driven out at the doorstep, looked down upon, laughed at. Could you have done that if you knew the house you lived in was mine? Paul fell silent. Wanting to collect rent is completely reasonable. There's nothing illegal about it. I coldly laid out the facts. Shall we go to court then, and let the judge decide? This man couldn't even acknowledge his wrongdoing. He was just that sort of person. Thanks for the divorce papers. I'll submit them as soon as they arrive. With those words, I hung up. But this wasn't the end. After filing the divorce papers the next day, I decided on my next steps. First, I called the caregiving service to cancel it, since I was paying for it, and there was no longer a need to spend money on my mother-in-law. Next was the bank procedure. I stopped all automatic transfers from the account I had used for sending money to Paul's family. I had been sending $2,000 from my salary every month as a remittance. It was not a small amount, but I believed it was necessary because Paul said so. Moreover, his parents didn't know it was my money. Paul had boasted to them, "I'm sending the money I earned." Your money? Don't make me laugh. The truth was the opposite. Most of Paul's salary went to his mistress. Luxury brands, overseas trips, and lately, even an upscale apartment in the city. Seeing the monthly payments, I was astonished. About 90% of Paul's income was vanishing into his affairs. The detective agency's report listed all the evidence. Meals at high-end restaurants, dates at famous hotels in the city, and the recently purchased luxury apartment. In the photos, Paul was happily embracing his mistress. The bank transaction details showed his lavish spending. I decided to send these evidence documents to his parents by registered mail. The enclosed letter stated, "All the remittances until now have been paid from my income. As Paul and I are divorced, I will completely stop these payments." As I posted the envelope, imagining his parents' reactions made me smirk. Their proud son was actually a fraudster living off his wife's income. The image of their arrogant faces learning this truth was vivid in my mind. A few days after sending the documents, I visited my uncle's company. In fact, my uncle was the president of the company where Paul worked. He had also been the go-between at our wedding. "Thank you for coming. I've heard the story." My uncle's expression hardened as he looked at the investigation report. Paul. Summoned, Paul entered the reception room, looking nervous. "What is this? Are you trying to disgrace me?" This is." As Paul tried to make excuses, I pressed further. "That woman is an employee of a rival company." Paul's face lost all its color. I pulled out another report from the private investigator. It turns out she's actually an industrial spy. She's been making quite a profit from the confidential information leaked by you, Paul. What? No, that wasn't my intention. Silence. My shout echoed through the reception room. I can't forgive you for betraying Wendy, let alone betraying the company. Paul trembled, his face pale. You're fired immediately. Don't think you can work in this industry ever again. President, please. Enough. Get out. Paul crawled out of the room. None of his former arrogance remained. And a week later, suddenly, my in-laws visited our family home. To avoid a neighborhood disturbance, I quietly let them into the house. We are truly sorry. As soon as my in-laws entered, they began to apologize deeply at the entrance. Looking down at my kneeling in-laws, I noticed my mother-in-law no longer needed her crutches. The injury she had exaggerated so much seemed to have healed completely. We were wrong, we're so sorry. I couldn't help but smile coldly when my father-in-law admitted he was wrong. Do you really believe that? I slowly took out a photo from the drawer. Oh, what's this? The photo showed my father-in-law walking arm in arm with an unfamiliar woman. You seem very lively, father. His face turned even paler. While needing your wife's care, you went on a trip with your mistress, huh? I pulled out my phone and played a recording. That man, he even uses his wife's pension to buy me gifts. Such a fool. The raw testimony made my father-in-law freeze. The caregiving was a lie. The plan was to tie up the daughter-in-law and go to the spa with me. As the recorded voice played, my mother-in-law silently glared at my father-in-law. Kathy, it's not what it looks like. Be quiet. In a panic, my father-in-law tried to explain. But my mother-in-law sharply silenced him with an icy voice. You touched my pension? No. Well. Spa? You had me pretend to be bedridden. My father-in-law shrank back. Every month, you're taking some of your mother-in-law's pension to give to your lover, aren't you? With those words, my mother-in-law's anger exploded. This filthy man. Suddenly, my mother-in-law's slap resounded across the room. I want a divorce. Right now. Stop, just stop. Be quiet. You fraudster. Liar. Amid the shouting, the situation escalated into a full-blown crisis. I just quietly watched the scene unfold. I'm leaving. I never want to see your face again. Hey, wait. As the two argued, they left the house. Afterward, my in-laws' lives rapidly deteriorated. As promised, when they failed to pay the rent, I relentlessly demanded they vacate. My in-laws were eventually evicted from their longtime home. It was an inevitable outcome. As expected, the two divorced and started walking separate paths. Although my father-in-law turned to his mistress, she was married. To her, my father-in-law was just a diversion from her mundane life. After the divorce, when he tried to initiate a formal relationship, she easily discarded him. Having lost everything, my father-in-law was left bewildered. Meanwhile, Paul bounced between jobs, eventually starting live-in work at a small diner. There, by chance, both of my separated in-laws approached him for money at the same time. You're our son, you should take care of your parents. Accidentally meeting there, my in-laws began arguing again. You heartless person. With her shout, my mother-in-law effortlessly threw my father-in-law aside. Her once frail appearance was like a lie. Stop it. Just leave me alone. Paul's desperate attempts to stop them were futile. And my in-laws wreaked havoc in the room. Walls were damaged, floors gouged, and windows shattered. Ultimately, Paul was also kicked out of the diner. The three who had ridiculed me steadily fell into disgrace. But it was no longer my concern. At that time, I had already left America, accepting an overseas assignment that had been proposed earlier. I started a new life abroad. 6 months into my life overseas, I met a man. He was an artist, kind and sincere. He accepted my past and recognized me for who I am. As our relationship began, my heart gradually healed. My happiness had finally arrived. Oh no, the important passport is being washed away. You better pick it up quickly, shouldn't you? Huh? When I checked the contents of my bag, I couldn't find my passport. It's important, so I was taking good care of it, but it's not on purpose, you know? What? when I got angry at my mother-in-law's attitude. I could hear my husband's laughter from next door. It's good you enjoyed it so much, Mom. It's your own fault for not managing yourself. Reflect and search for it yourself. I'm going back to America tomorrow, so good luck. The trip to Rome was supposed to end without incident. So, if that's how you feel, I swear I'll get back at you. Enjoy it for now. Goodbye. It was meant to be a special honeymoon. But I'm the only one left feeling out of place. If your mom means that much to you, why not take a world trip just for the two of you? At 26, this will likely become a dark history for me, and I bowed my head on the spot. My name is Ira. Born in the snowy region, I was named for my snow-like beauty. I like the origin of my name and strive to achieve delicate beauty like snow. Working hard on skincare to live up to my name. Attracted by my name, my husband, Aaron, found me through people and approached me, saying, "You are as beautiful as your name." We worked at the same company, but in different departments and didn't know each other. His name was also given by his mother, and he was embarrassed by how ordinary it was. But I was drawn to his shy smile. He is smart and good-looking, and always tops in performance. He has a cheesy side, but he is the object of admiration among female employees. Aaron's mother had him at 18, and at 49, she is still young. She prefers wearing revealing clothes like miniskirts. Initially surprised, I found her easy to talk to, and it didn't take long to get along. He proposed dating with marriage in mind, and we registered our marriage 6 months later. Everyone blessed us, and I thought we would have a happy life. But his and his mother's attitudes changed dramatically. Especially after they learned about my father in detail, their demeanor shifted. "Hey, is your dad the president of the company?" "Yes, didn't I mention it?" My mother-in-law, who was visiting our house, suddenly asked. I knew it. I thought it was the same surname. "Why didn't you tell me? You didn't even mention it when greeting or talking about work. So I thought it was some shady business. I just didn't get a chance to tell because you were talking so much. Also, after hearing my mother works part-time, you looked at her with pity. And then went on about your background and Aaron's story. My parents just smiled, but they approved of the marriage because of Aaron's good character and my mother-in-law's conversation skills. However, there wasn't much chance to talk, and they didn't ask much. You really shouldn't be keeping secrets about your parents, that's not right. I wasn't hiding it, I'm sorry. Indeed, I should have told someone like Aaron, and thinking this, he said. So, I will become the heir to the company now. Finally, a place where I can live up to my name. Marrying Ira was really the best thing. Wait, that's not sure yet. Dad hasn't said anything. I hastily denied it, but you are an only daughter. Inevitably, your husband, me, will take over your father's company. I don't need to keep up appearances foolishly anymore. I can be my true self. As soon as his first person changed, his gentlemanly demeanor vanished. I'm tired of playing the hypocrite every day. And I'm thrilled to think I don't have to work under incompetent bosses anymore. All right, then it's settled, let's go on a honeymoon. I can't keep up with this development. Why suddenly a honeymoon? He was progressing the conversation in his head. I couldn't keep up with Aaron like this. It's embarrassing if the future president hasn't gone on a honeymoon. How about going abroad boldly? I'm happy about the honeymoon, and I like going abroad. But don't get your hopes up about you becoming the heir. As I was pondering how to stop his runaway thoughts, my mother-in-law chimed in. How about Rome, like seeing the Trevi Fountain? I want to decide with Aaron, not just because you're going. My logic puzzled my mother-in-law. What are you saying? I'm going too. It's rare to go abroad. And it's unfair if just the two of you have fun. Yes? What is she even saying? That's right, a family trip sounds good, just the three of us, me, Ira, and Mom. No, don't decide on your own. Aren't you listening to me? I want to go with just Aaron. My mother-in-law snorted and said, for the daughter of a president, you sure are stingy. Aaron nodded in agreement. I was completely deceived by him. I suddenly suggested to the two of them. If it's a family trip, isn't your father going too? He and I divorced after talking with your parents. My mother-in-law answered nonchalantly, leaving me dumbfounded. He was my fourth husband, but things got too serious, and we fought a lot. A case of irreconcilable differences. I haven't heard about any 4 divorces from Aaron either. As I glared at Aaron, he looked away. You were hiding your parents from us too, it's the same for both of us. The atmosphere between me and my mother-in-law turned sour. And as the tension grew, Aaron clapped his hands and directed our gazes towards him. We fight because we don't know each other well. Let's go on a trip, the three of us. To deepen our bonds. This is the only way. Let's go apply for passports right away. The two of them cheerfully went to the passport application counter together. Left behind, I could only hold my head and think, my head hurts. I'll lie down for a bit. In the calm after the storm, I headed to the bedroom. On the day of the trip, I drove with Aaron to his mother's house. While I dressed simply, my mother-in-law appeared in flashy clothes. When I recoiled, she was also surprised by my attire. What terrible and unfashionable taste you have. We're going to the Trevi Fountain in Rome, you know? Let's go more flashy. I'm comfortable with this. I'm not good at standing out. We'll be late if we don't leave soon, so let's go. My mother-in-law frowned in dissatisfaction. There's still time, I'll lend you my clothes, so go change. We don't have that kind of time. For international flights, we need to be at the airport at least 2 hours before departure to avoid missing it. So we should leave now. I had explained this repeatedly over the past 3 days. But it seemed Aaron hadn't listened because he was too excited. Security checks are stricter than domestic flights. Just get in the car without arguing, we're wasting time. Mom, please listen to Ira. If we have extra time, we can look at the souvenir section. With Aaron's intervention, my mother-in-law reluctantly agreed. We managed to complete the boarding procedures smoothly and departed for Rome. We made it to the destination, but the real challenge was just beginning. Since I could speak Italian, I was always worn out playing translator. For my mother-in-law and Aaron. It felt like I was both a tour guide and a helper at the same time. Ira, can you take us to this shop here? I was always glued to my smartphone, constantly looking up directions. That shop seems to be a bit far. There are various other shops and tourist spots along the way, so why don't we stop by those on the way? I wanted to go right away. My mother-in-law would start complaining whenever things didn't go her way. Initially, she had insisted on letting her plan everything, but in reality, she had no plan and only chose the places she wanted to visit, with Aaron tagging along like a devoted lover. It was the worst trip ever. I was tasked with interpreting everywhere we went and handling all payments. Prepare a lot of money since it's a rare trip, and let's spend freely, she had said. When I asked about the budget, I couldn't believe what she told me. Maybe about $10,000 for now. Oh, Ira, could you cover it first? Why should I? It's impossible for me to spend such a large amount alone. So please prepare it yourself. I stated this clearly, but once again, my mother-in-law wouldn't listen. How could common folks like us have that kind of money? You're a president's daughter, so spending that much shouldn't be a problem for you. Aaron, completely under his mother's influence, just nodded. This déjà vu, I really wanted it to stop. Eventually, I ended up paying for everything. And these two enjoyed the trip without any worries. Influenced by a certain cartoon, we visited the Colosseum, ate squid ink pasta, and even took manga-specific poses for photos at the Rialto Bridge. For me, this family trip had turned into a pilgrimage. On the night before the last day, we finally arrived at my mother-in-law's goal, the Trevi Fountain. I thought I'd throw a coin in, but just as I focused on my bag, I felt someone touch it. Shit, I remembered a colleague saying that pickpocketing was common here. I clutched my bag in a panic, but it was too late. There was my mother-in-law, holding my wallet and passport case. What are you doing? Give it back, please. What a scary face, it's just a joke, a joke. My mother-in-law answered with a serious face, clearly not joking. It was good to be concerned, but honestly, it was bothersome. Thank you for your concern, but it's fine, please give it back. Don't be shy, I'll hold on to it properly for you. Since I didn't trust my mother-in-law, I insisted she return it. But then she dramatically threw something toward the fountain. With a tap on her own head and a broad smile, she said, "Oops, sorry, my hand slipped, and your passport just flew out of my hand. It looks like it fell into the fountain." What? Are you serious? I managed to contain my anger. If I hit her, it would lower my own dignity. My favorite character flashed in my mind, helping me stay calm. That face, that's a lying face. Yes, my favorite character saved me. It wasn't on purpose. It just went boing by itself. It obviously looked intentional. I thought this was some kind of comedy sketch. My mother-in-law was acting all clueless and giggling as she saw my passport disappear. I was thinking, what's so hilarious? She must be out of her mind. But, we have a problem now. Without your passport, you can't go back. Aaron stepped in when he noticed something was wrong. What are you two arguing about? Your mother threw my passport into the fountain. I thought Aaron would take my side given the situation, but he said, "That's unfortunate. We need to look for it quickly, don't we?" "That's right, Ira, go and look for it quickly." My mother-in-law pointed at the fountain, and Aaron made no move to help. "Aaron, you should help look, and of course, you too, Mother." "Why should we help? You look for it yourself." I glared at Aaron. "It's your mother's fault. It's only natural that she takes responsibility and looks for it. She didn't do it on purpose, right? Mom's just a klutz, forgive her." My mother-in-law, pleased by Aaron's words, jumped on him. "If we don't find it, I'll be going back to America tomorrow first. And I'll keep hold of Ira's wallet too." "That's troublesome, please give it back now." As I tried to retrieve my wallet, Aaron pushed me away. "Don't mess with my beloved mom. I'm not interested in a wife who doesn't show respect for her husband's folks. I'll take the contents of this wallet as a severance payment. Just disappear from our sight. After all, I'll take the couple's assets. If we divorce, I won't be able to become the heir." I'll dispose of your belongings after you return, so find a new place. That's. I could only silently watch as the two of them walked back to the hotel. The next day at 4 p.m., Aaron called me. Where did you hide our passports? We can't go back like this. I calmly responded to my shouting husband. I didn't hide them, and I don't care if you guys can't go back. Aaron furiously bombarded me with questions. Are you still my wife? Your husband is in trouble. Where are you? Where? At the airport. You guys laughed and kicked me out when you went back to the hotel. Why am I the one getting yelled at? Don't mess with me. After that, I searched in the fountain but couldn't find it. With so many people around, it wouldn't be strange if someone took it. Why are you at the airport? Don't tell me you actually found them. But kept quiet just to make us suffer the same fate. That's a terrible personality. Hey, who are you talking to? If you're talking to yourself, I'm hanging up. I need to prepare to board soon. Despite his attempts to twist the story to his advantage, I coldly clarified, and his voice dropped. I'm obviously talking to you. Seems my suspicions were right. We're coming there too, so wait at the entrance, we're going back together. Even if you come, it's useless. No one has their passports. Aaron fell silent. Your mother threw everyone's passports into the fountain. Huh? He seemed confused. I was carrying everyone's passports in a passport case. Don't you know it's common sense to carry passports during international travel? It's my first time, how would I know? If it was his first time, he should have researched properly. And didn't they receive any instructions when the passports were issued? Probably this family didn't listen properly. Anyway, if you want to blame someone, blame your mother. I'll go back first and throw all your stuff outside. Wait, how can you go back? You don't even have your wallet, what about money? Realizing I might be telling the truth, Aaron panicked. I once lost my passport the day before returning from studying abroad. I caused a lot of trouble for my parents then. Since then, I always prepare copies of my family register and the photo page of my passport. And a note with the address of where I'm staying when traveling abroad. I got travel documents issued at 3 p.m. after processing them first thing in the morning. I had divided my cash in case of theft. And my credit cards were safely stored in a hard-to-find spot in my travel bag. Why didn't you prepare ours? It's selfish to only prepare for yourself. I sighed deeply. I've told you many times. We're not that careless, we don't need it, you said. Laughing off my advice. It's your own fault. Feels like we did have that conversation. Just give me some money then. Credit card will do. My wallet is empty. And send me the family register copy after you get back, please. What is this person even saying? He's forgotten how they treated me. Who was it that didn't reach out when I needed help? We're just a marriage of convenience, right? I don't care what happens to you guys. Taking care of one's mother is normal. After all, I am Lord Aaron. Frustrated by his defiant attitude, I was utterly appalled. You're just a mama's boy. Get it together, Aaron. What did you say? His shouting hurt my ears, and irritated, I spoke my mind. It sounds like you imagine Lord Aaron as someone who's so blinded by his power that he pushes away anyone who's not blood and treats people like they're his belongings. That's just messed up. I'll report everything to my parents. Prepare for a divorce and either dismissal or transfer from your job. Wait, we were wrong. I'll change, so please help. At least for Mom. His desperate plea didn't move me at all. Why doesn't a wolf in sheep's clothing Aaron use his own money for his precious mother? Don't leech off me any further. Goodbye. Later, I explained the situation to Aaron's estranged parents, and they managed to send the necessary documents for them to return home, though they struggled a lot without speaking Italian. After returning, Aaron found all his belongings thrown out and collapsed then and there while his mother, furious, banged on the front door. I immediately contacted my parents. About 20 minutes later, they arrived and started lecturing them. Given the neighbors' eyes, I let them in, and it was like a scene from hell. Aaron and his mother had apologized deeply. My parents, having seen his true nature, demanded a divorce on the spot and made him sign the divorce papers. They also charged him with the travel expenses of $10,000 I had paid, plus an additional $5,000 for compensation for the harassment. Aaron avoided dismissal but was transferred to a subsidiary, cutting off his path to the elite. His mother, unable to give up, kept showing up daily at my house trying to reconcile with me and Aaron. But when I threatened to call the police or involve a lawyer, she finally gave up. It seems she relied on a man for money during this ordeal, but apparently, this man had been involved with her even before her divorce from my former father-in-law, who found out and demanded $30,000 in compensation through a lawyer. Well, I was the one who snitched. She was hoping to make things right with me so she could settle her bills. It's about time she figured out how to handle her own expenses. I surprisingly had fun on my ruined trip abroad all by myself this time. I visited the Trevi Fountain in Rome again, replaced the bad memories with good ones, and reset everything. Next time I marry, I'll be more careful to choose someone my parents can truly be happy about. Why are you here? Don't tell me a high school graduate and poor person is trying to get treated by a doctor? My ex-husband chuckled to himself as if he found his own words amusing. Unmoved by his disdainful behavior, I remained calm. It's none of your business. What a cold woman you are. Just so you know, even at a university hospital, there's no cure for being a high school graduate or poor. Unable to find humor in his poor joke, I didn't laugh. Just then, I noticed a nurse rushing towards us. She waved her hand when she saw us. It's an emergency. We have a patient in critical condition, unconscious. Please come immediately. My name is Mandy. I'm the eldest of 4 siblings and lost my father when I was in elementary school. After his death, my mother raised us alone. But the debt he left made it difficult for her, despite her hard work. I was forced to work at a local factory to help support my family. I wanted my younger siblings to follow their desired paths without financial hardship, so I worked relentlessly. The turning point came when I was 18. After being invited to dinner several times by a supervisor, Steese, from my department, he proposed a relationship. And I also had a favorable impression of him. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and on my 20th birthday, I accepted his marriage proposal. I had told Steve about my educational background from the beginning of our relationship. But he always said, education doesn't matter when you love someone, and strived to treat me as an equal. Although he was older, he never acted superior and always respected me. However, that was only a temporary dream. Over time, Steve increasingly looked down on me. Hey, show some gratitude. Who do you think is making it possible for you to live like this? His disgruntled voice made me tense up. After our marriage, at his strong insistence, I quit the factory to become a full-time housewife. I had planned to continue working even after marriage, but he wanted me to stay home, preparing meals and keeping the house clean every day. I was worried about reducing the amount I could send to my mother, but I couldn't bring myself to resist, so I quit my job. Yet, Steve looked down on me as an unemployed who didn't work and only cost money. Steve, I want to work too. He scoffed at my feeble attempt at protest. Few companies would hire a high school graduate. Just obey me and keep quiet doing the housework. His cold voice echoed. Quitting my job as he demanded was a mistake. The allowance he gave me was gradually decreasing. If I said I needed more money, he would surely blame my management skills. Knowing this, I couldn't speak up and covered the shortfall with my own savings. While watching my husband drink idly in the evening, I thought vaguely about divorce. Fortunately, I'm still young. If I divorced Steve, I could still have children with someone else. He probably doesn't know how much I'm suffering. He must think I'm a stupid woman who doesn't listen to him. Slowly feeling my heart growing cold, I pondered without being able to take any action. As I watched my savings dwindle and endured Steve's contemptuous behavior and our poor marital relationship, I realized this couldn't continue. I repeatedly tried to discuss things with him, but each time, he avoided conversation with excuses like being tired from work or having plans to go out. Eventually, he even started saying, "I don't even want to talk to someone with such a low education." I had reached my limit. After finishing dinner and putting things away, I took out the divorce papers hidden in a drawer. My section was already filled out. All that was left was to bring up divorce to him. Moistening my dried lips, I summoned the courage to speak to him as he watched TV. "Steve, I have something important to discuss." Hearing my tense voice, Steve turned around lazily. Holding out the thin piece of paper, I faced him directly. "I want a divorce." Steve's eyebrows twitched. I braced myself for yelling. However, contrary to my expectation, no shout came. Cautiously checking his reaction, Steve quietly clenched his fists, his face turning red with anger. Yet, he didn't approach me. Perhaps thinking that doing anything more would mean defeat. Trying desperately to control his swirling anger. After a long silence, he growled in a low voice. "A high school graduate like you." His fists trembled more intensely, his angry gaze piercing me. His cold look was chilling, and I instinctively stepped back. "Do you really think you, a high school graduate, can defy me? You don't have any right to initiate a divorce." My husband's voice was loud and intimidating as he vented his anger. Still, I couldn't back down. I had suffered enough at his hands. Holding back the urge to cry, I glared back at him. Perhaps surprised by my unexpected strength, he momentarily looked taken aback. Clutching the divorce papers in one hand, I raised my smartphone towards him. On the screen were messages between him and a female subordinate, which was clear evidence of his affair. "While you can't even provide me with enough for basic living expenses, it seems you've been quite generous to her. If you don't need me anymore, then let's get a divorce and set me free." For the first time, my husband was at a loss for words. He apparently didn't know I had evidence of his affair. He must have been overly confident that I would never find out. After a while, unable to find an excuse, and realizing he couldn't talk his way out of it, he laughed defiantly. "It's exhausting to live with a stupid woman. I need a break." Without any remorse, he admitted to the affair and turned his back on me as if the conversation was over. I felt a hollow ache in my chest, and I circled around to turn off the TV, bringing silence back to the living room. His sullen face turned towards me. I steadied my trembling legs and presented the divorce papers to him again. All I'm asking is for you to sign this. Please. I couldn't understand why he was so reluctant to divorce. He looked down on me, saying he was tired of living with me and cheated with another woman, yet he clung to this marriage. If he insisted I had no right to ask for a divorce, I was willing to let him initiate it. Public perception and pride didn't matter to me if it meant getting away from him. If you really want a divorce that badly, he said with a sigh as he reached for the divorce papers, then return all the living expenses I've paid you. If you can do that, I might agree to the divorce. That's impossible. Can't do it, huh? Well, that makes sense since you're a jobless and high school graduate. He chuckled deeply, finding something amusing in his own cruelty. Over the 3 years of our marriage, even by the lowest estimates, he had given me over $50,000 for living expenses. Although I hadn't received much lately, it was still a substantial amount that my savings couldn't cover. Almost all of it went to rent and groceries, and I had little to no discretionary money. Despite my best efforts to save, I often had to dip into my own savings to make ends meet. I couldn't accept his absurd demand, and I felt darkness closing in. He seemed to enjoy laying these impossible conditions on me, watching me struggle. Then, a small flame of resolve lit up within me. I wanted to prove him wrong. My determination solidified. I'll pay it all back, I declared firmly, meeting his gaze. He half smiled, clearly thinking I couldn't possibly manage it. But that was exactly why I had to do it. Can I have some time, though? And I'd like to settle the divorce first. You wouldn't want to keep living with a woman who might take your assets, right? He seemed uncertain of my intentions for a moment, but then hastily signed the divorce papers without much thought and handed them back to me. It's just an empty promise you can't keep. Don't spread this around. It would ruin my reputation. With those selfish words, our marriage abruptly came to an end. But I felt no despair. I was fortunate to be only 23 years old. As long as you're young, you can do anything, my mother always said. I quickly packed my bags and left the house without a second glance at my husband. Dragging my suitcase, I boarded an express bus home. The next time I would see my husband, everything would be dramatically different. I reaffirmed my resolve as I watched the urban landscape flow by outside the window. 12 years later, I found myself standing bewildered in the lobby of a university hospital. It was my first visit, and the vast grounds had me completely lost. I tried to ask for directions, but every staff member seemed too busy to care about a lost visitor. I spun the map in my hands, trying to figure out where I was and where I needed to go. Could it be Mandy? Suddenly, a man's voice called my name from behind. I turned around, startled, to find a man who looked to be approaching middle age. I felt I had seen his face somewhere before but couldn't place it. Excuse me, but who might you be? As I asked apologetically, the man sighed deeply and looked down at me. Oh, come on, does a high school graduate also have bad memories? It's unimaginable to forget someone you were married to. Hearing that, I took a hard look at the man's face. Memories slowly started coming back to me, particularly his condescending gaze. Steve. Having been addressed by name, Steve settled into a chair in the lobby with a satisfied air. Prompted by him, I somewhat reluctantly took the seat next to him and observed his face again. His hair had thinned, and his face had aged significantly. Most notably, the trim figure he once had was now flabby and his belly protruded. 12 years had indeed changed him. "You recognized me quite well, didn't you?" "Well, of course, your face hasn't changed at all, and you're still ugly." His casual insult didn't faze me. I was too weary to make a fuss about it. My lack of reaction seemed to disappoint him, and he scratched his head disinterestedly, letting an awkward silence hang between us. What did he want by speaking to me? Surely, he couldn't possibly remember the promise from 12 years ago. He adjusted his graying hair and then looked at me with a sly grin. "Why are you here?" "Don't tell me a high school graduate and poor person is trying to get treated by a doctor?" He laughed at his own joke. I remained unaffected by his demeaning behavior. "It's none of your business." What a cold woman. Just so you know, even university hospitals don't have a cure for being a high school graduate or poor. I couldn't muster a laugh at his poor joke. Just then, I noticed a nurse rushing toward us, waving her hand. "Mandy, we have an emergency. The patient is unconscious and in critical condition. Please come right away." I immediately stood up and took a lab coat from the nurse. Steve stared at me in disbelief. "Thank you for your support on your first day after transferring. There are no other doctors available right now." The nurse ushered me away quickly, leaving no time to pay any mind to Steve. I handed him the map I'd been holding, as I didn't have time to dispose of it properly. He watched me, eyes wide, unable to grasp the situation. As you see, I became a doctor. After dealing with the emergency, I was due to enter the consultation room. It was still before the official start of my shift. But wandering the hospital alone, I'd likely get lost again. I reviewed the medical chart and gasped when I saw who it was. Steve, too, widened his eyes in disbelief upon seeing me in the examination room. According to the chart, Steve was suffering from a heart condition and had been referred to the university hospital. I immediately composed myself and returned to my duties. Steve, seemingly dissatisfied, did not attempt to hide his sour expression. "Any questions before you leave?" I asked routinely. "How did a high school graduate become a doctor?" he muttered under his breath. The nurse behind me looked at him with a puzzled expression. I hesitated for a moment before responding. "My father was a doctor. It's not that I was not intelligent enough to attend university." I remembered my father vaguely. He was always busy with work, rarely home, and squandered most of what he earned on alcohol and hostess clubs, even accruing debts. Yet, I was grateful for his passion for education, without which I would not have become a doctor. I had always believed, since I was aware, that I would be a doctor like him. I never struggled academically through elementary and middle school, even in high school, and my mother was always pleased, confident I could become a doctor. After my father passed away, I had to start working. But I continued to study diligently, and eventually applied to medical school. But you couldn't have afforded university. My mother saved all the money I sent home. There was also a scholarship program. A scholarship? You. His demeaning tone almost got to me. But I quickly regained my composure and glanced at his worn-out face. You always underestimated me as a stupid high school graduate. But you just never noticed. His face contorted with displeasure as he glared at me. A nurse whispered from behind that it was almost time. I put away the chart and prepared to call the next patient. Then, as if remembering something, I looked back at him. "Oh, as for the living expenses you wanted me to repay, I can pay them back now, and double the amount. I earn more than you do now." His face flushed a deep red. I had chosen my words carefully to crush his excessive pride. Although his anger visibly bubbled, he managed only to stand up. With a loud noise in the examination room, which was a public space visited by other staff. "What is this, a quack doctor? I'll file a complaint against this hospital." With that disjointed parting shot, he stormed out of the examination room. Left alone, I exhaled deeply, releasing the fatigue. Despite the weariness, I felt oddly refreshed. Eventually, Steve chose to seek treatment at another hospital. But he was advised there as well to return to the university hospital where I worked. When he came back, he looked uncomfortable. After our divorce, the woman he had an affair with had left him. And rumors of his infidelity had spread throughout his office. The affair and our divorce had become public, forcing him to resign. He had been abandoned by both women, damaging his pride, increasing his drinking and smoking, which had led to his heart condition. I felt a slight pity as he faced a major surgery. But considering how he had treated me during our marriage, I couldn't find it in me to forgive him. Of course, his treatment was a separate matter. And I carried out my duties professionally. We still see each other occasionally during his checkups. At one point, he even suggested we try again, but I politely declined. I have no intention of marrying anytime soon and am happily living with my family. It might sound strange for me to say, but as a doctor, my reputation is quite good. And I earn enough to support my mother and siblings. Amidst my busy but fulfilling days, I sometimes reflect on that fruitless marriage. Come celebrate Mom's birthday instead of sleeping. The man speaking so freely to me, hospitalized with a high fever, is my husband who always prioritizes his mother. I've decided. I'm done with this husband. He's out of here. But first, let's stir up a little trouble. I am a very bad wife. And a bad daughter-in-law too. My name is Emma. In my 20s, as a single noble office lady, I never scrimped. Back then, buying deli foods from the French restaurants and enjoying a drink on Friday nights was my greatest pleasure. Now, as a frugal 40-year-old, I prefer gulping down sparkling wine. After all, sparkling wine is better than wine. Sometimes I think it might be nice to indulge like the old days. But my cooking skills have improved. Now, it's more fun thinking up menus that surpass those restaurant foods. Cooking isn't fun when it feels like a chore. But it's enjoyable when you aim to make delicious things. I used to hate cooking when I reached my 30s. It felt like mere labor back then. About 10 years ago. 2 years into my marriage, I was grappling with a particular problem, the relationship between my husband, Kevin, and my mother-in-law. Our newlywed life had been nothing but fun for a while. It all started one holiday when my husband spoke to me. "Mom, What?" My husband, who always calls me Emma, suddenly said Mom. I was shocked and a bit embarrassed, playfully replying, "Calling me Mom is a bit premature, don't you think? Practicing for when we have kids?" To my surprise, he became flustered. "Sorry, I mistook you for my mom. Mistakenly calling me Mom." I couldn't believe my ears. It would have been better if he had said it was a rehearsal. My husband had never called his mother Mom in front of me before. Unsatisfied with the mistake, I asked what it meant, and he said, "It's a leftover from childhood, I've always called her Mom." Although he corrected it as an adult, it sometimes slips out. Because he doesn't want me to think less of him for it. Among my female friends, many still call their mothers mom. It didn't seem unusual, and I thought it was fine if there were no problems within the family. However, the fact that my husband still calls his mother mom left me feeling indescribably disgusted. I couldn't understand why I could forgive my friends but not my husband, but it just felt incredibly wrong. He seemed to feel bad about the mix-up, but that wasn't the point. It was more about the fundamental discomfort I felt. After that, my husband, having let his secret slip, seemed to lose his inhibitions. He began referring to his mother as mom, in the third person more frequently in front of me. And then, another problem arose. Ever since we married, gradually, my mother-in-law seemed to want to meet with my husband frequently, and she began inviting us to her house often. Very often. Originally, my husband had lived at home for a long time. It wasn't that he lived in the countryside, and his job was close to his parents' house. So he didn't need to live alone and could save money. If he hadn't married me, he might have ended up a mama's boy forever. But I had also lived at home for a long time, so it was mutual. However, now I began to wonder if there was another reason for his prolonged home life. Perhaps he loved his mother, or should I say, mom, too much to leave. Observing my mother-in-law's behavior, it was hard not to think so. At least, it was clear she loved her son very much. I couldn't tell if she was overtly doting, but she certainly wanted to see his face regularly. I understand loving your own child, but he's already a man in his late 20s. It seemed about time for a little child independence, or so I thought, as an outsider. My mother-in-law's welcoming mode knew no bounds. I made Kevin's favorite fried chicken, so come have dinner with us tonight. I found Kevin's favorite snacks on sale, so I bought a lot. Should I bring them over to your place? She kept trying to connect with her son using every trick in the book, and I, getting dragged into it, honestly found it annoying. Mother-in-law, ever heard of personal space? As someone who works in caregiving, going to my in-laws' house at night, or having my mother-in-law visit our home was honestly a hassle. It might sound selfish, but after a draining day at work, I want to relax without having to be considerate of anyone else. Still, it felt cruel to snub my mother-in-law, who was waiting with homemade food. Regrettably, I had told my husband, "It's a bit troublesome to have her come over so often. Why don't you visit your mom by yourself?" I explained to my mother-in-law that I didn't have the physical energy because of my job, and she seemed to understand. Well, it seemed like she didn't care much whether I came or not. Thus, my husband started visiting his parents' house regularly. I thought that settled it, but only briefly. One day, I came home from work to find my mother-in-law in our house. She had been cooking, waiting for us. Apparently, my husband had given her a spare key and told her, "Think of this as your own home." Wait a minute. I hadn't heard a single thing about this. The table was laden with my husband's favorite dishes, fried chicken, hamburgers, and pasta. If you stuck a flag in that ketchup rice, it'd be a perfect kid's meal. Thank you for cooking, but I'm not a child. I had a bad feeling as I cautiously opened the refrigerator and found that 5 days' worth of ingredients had been used up. It's the food for this house, so I thought it was okay to use it as Kevin said. My mother-in-law explained. But I hadn't heard anything about this. Exhausted from work, I felt like my insides were boiling, but I held back. After all, my mother-in-law meant no harm. But that doesn't make it okay. And the worst part wasn't her, it was my husband, who casually okayed everything without consulting me. In the end, my mother-in-law stayed over that night and returned to her home the next morning. With work looming, I didn't have time to press my husband on why he gave the spare key to his mother. I wanted to discuss this issue as soon as possible, so I set up a time to talk with my husband that evening. Surprisingly, he agreed to the discussion quite easily. "I'm sorry. I'll ask Mom to refrain from using the spare key from now on." He promised me that. But that wasn't really the end of it. Eventually, my mother-in-law started coming to our house once or twice a week to cook and stay over. Unfortunately, my husband hadn't exactly broken his promise. The use of the spare key was to be limited, not forbidden. So that's how it is. Huh? According to my husband, I told her to limit it. But there's nothing I can do if she comes over on her own since she has the key. Are you kidding me? Giving out the spare key was the original mistake. And the person who gave it out is feigning ignorance, which is incredibly infuriating. Moreover, my mother-in-law has taken liberties like rearranging the kitchen and adding kitchenware, treating our house as if it were her own. Am I being too narrow-minded? No, that can't be it. Whose house is this again? It might already be mostly taken over. Proof of that is that my mother-in-law now casually criticizes me. "Oh, Emma, you're using bouillon cubes? Please don't feed Kevin that stuff. I raised him to eat as additive-free as possible." So, the result is a guy who loves kids' meals. I still can't say that. The husband himself chugs juices and supplements full of additives. He loves candy too. My stress had reached its limit. Maybe it would be better to divorce. I've been having sleepless nights. Naturally, my body is screaming. My stomach hurts, and I feel dizzy every day because I can't sleep. Mistakes at work are piling up. Then one day, it seemed my body had reached its limit. I developed a high fever close to 105 degrees. I barely had the energy to crawl. And I would lose consciousness almost immediately if I let my guard down. It's frustrating, but I have no choice but to rely on my husband. "Sorry, my temperature has been fluctuating between 100 and 105 degrees. Could you buy me some cooling sheets and a sports drink?" Panting, I desperately told my husband. But his response was far beyond what I had expected. "What are you talking about? We had a dinner planned at my parents' house today." Huh? What is he talking about? I try to recall, and indeed, I remember that during her last visit, my mother-in-law had said, "Let's have a dinner party at our place next time." She was excited, planning to invite my sister-in-law and her family for a fun gathering. Do you even understand my condition right now? I respond, barely able to breathe. My husband then says, "Well, I'll just go by myself then. See you." And he leaves for work, completely ignoring my request for him to buy some essentials. Doesn't he care that his wife is suffering from a high fever? Is a dinner with his mom that important? Unbelievable. It was a mistake to rely on him. I crawl back into bed, wondering if I might not wake up this time. But I do wake up. The first things I see are the stark white ceiling and curtains. It seems I'm alive, but where am I? This isn't home. My husband peers into my face, smiling, "You're awake." Where am I? At the hospital. I was really shocked. When I came home, you were collapsed in the hallway. I collapsed? Yeah, you seem to be in agony from a high fever. Maybe you went downstairs to get some water and collapsed near the kitchen. I don't even remember if I was trying to get water. The fever must have reached a life-threatening level. I instinctively feel relieved that I woke up safely. I'm showing symptoms of dehydration. And I have no strength in my body. My stomach has been upset recently. And I feel completely wrecked. It's decided that I need to stay hospitalized for a few days to be observed. 3 days into my hospital stay, the day before I'm supposed to be discharged, my husband calls me. I wonder what it's about. Are you still sleeping? It's Mom's birthday, get up and come celebrate. Huh? I'm stunned by my husband's angry voice over the phone. Telling me, who couldn't even bathe until yesterday due to a fever, to come celebrate Mom's birthday. Is he stupid? There's no way I can go. Besides, they just had a dinner party and now a birthday party? They could have combined them. I swallow all my complaints and respond with a logical argument. I've been hospitalized. There's no way I'm recovered. But my husband replies, it's just the flu, get over it quickly. True, the diagnosis is influenza. But I believe my weakened immune system is due to recent stress. Whose fault does he think that is? He dismissively says it's just the flu. However, my husband doesn't consider my feelings and says, you didn't come to the last meal, so you owe it to them. That's it. I'm done. I'm saying goodbye to a husband who prioritizes his mom over me. Did you say something? Nothing. It seems my husband missed my muttered words. Well, that's more convenient for me. I simply tell him, I'll make sure to visit your parents' house once I'm discharged. And hang up unilaterally. Perhaps upset by how I ended the call. My husband doesn't come to pick me up on the day of my discharge. Well, I don't care. Holding all my belongings from the hospital stay, I head to my in-laws' house. Oh, Emma, are you okay? My mother-in-law greets me with a surprised face. Thank you. I'm fully recovered now. I'm sorry for missing your birthday and the dinner party. That's fine, you must be tired. Come on in. While she is kind in demeanor, her expression clearly reads, it's not really pleasant having just the daughter-in-law over. She really doesn't mind that I missed the birthday and dinner parties. After making small talk with my in-laws for a bit, I soon left their house. My home is nearby, but I decided to stop by the local municipal office first. Back at home for the first time in a while, I quickly pack my things while my husband is away. I leave the divorce papers I just picked up on the table. Everything is ready. Then, my phone rings from my mother-in-law's number. I ignore it at first as it keeps ringing, and soon I see almost 20 missed calls. I finally answer, and to my surprise, it's my husband's voice over the phone. What's this about? Dear, why are you calling from your mother's phone? What do you mean, what's this about? What's this letter? Oh, you've read it then. A grin escapes me as my husband speaks. Then, apparently snatching the phone from him, my mother-in-law demands, is this true? Yes, it is. So, in the background, my husband shouts, Mom, it's not like that. But she seems not to hear him. That's because, when I left their house, I left a letter detailing the truth about my husband. At first, I was completely deceived. But actually, my husband isn't mom first. He's just pretending to be, while he's actually extremely annoyed by his mother. I overheard him talking on the phone with someone who seemed to be his junior. I'll treat you next time. What? Money? Oh, I can get as much as I need from my mom. No problem. Seriously, parents are like ATMs. At first, I thought I misheard. But it seems this is indeed how he feels. He finds his non-independent mother annoying, but lets her have her way to get an allowance. He gave out our house keys because he wanted more pocket money than usual. Apparently, he had been receiving about $1,000 a month from his mother, who is into stocks. However, with the truth now exposed to his mother, and having kept his true feelings hidden from his sister-in-law and father-in-law, he's been regretting and stressing over the increased interactions with his mother. Why would you? My mother-in-law is speechless. And that person, your son, he's quit his job, you know. What? My mother-in-law is dumbfounded, and my husband is desperate. What are you talking about? When she asks him if he's quit his job, he falls silent. I've been getting his resignation papers and pension book at home, so it's undeniable. You thought you were hiding it from me. But when we live in the same house, you can't hide anything. The call goes almost silent on the family's end. They probably put me on speaker, so everyone heard what I said. My husband mutters, well, that there were circumstances. Yes, gambling at the casino during work hours, important circumstances, right? That's why you got fired, isn't it? You were telling your junior about it. Hey. My husband panics, and my in-laws are appalled. Kevin, you liked gambling? You were hiding that from me? In response to my question, my husband hesitated and said, well. When pressed by his father to give a clear answer, he began, actually. It seems my husband has been a fan of gambling since his college days. He had kept it a secret from both me and his family, sneaking off to casinos during work breaks, so no one knew about his gambling habit. His workplace was fairly lax, and there were others doing similar things. At first, his results at work were good enough that his behavior was overlooked. However, as he gained more responsibilities at work after we got married, it became harder for him to visit casinos, which only increased his desire to gamble. Eventually, he lost control, spending more and more time at the parlors during work hours, until it was noticed by his workplace. Despite repeated warnings, he continued his long visits to casinos during work hours, and was finally fired. No company pays a salary for gambling. I'm just too tired of your duplicity and our life together. As I spoke my truth, my husband raised his voice. Even so, what's this divorce paper? Divorce is too extreme. Think it over. I'll think it over. I've thought it over just now, and I still want a divorce. You haven't thought it over at all. Are you seriously telling me to reconsider? Staying with an unemployed gambler who lies and didn't care even when I was dying? Instead of my husband, it was his mother who agreed with me. Yes, she's right. What, Mom? Aren't you on my side? I'm just an ATM to you, right? Automatic teller. Mom, that's what you think. After all the pain I went through to give birth to you. No, I mean, you're important to me, Mom. Then Emma's claims are false? Of course. Why did you panic then? When I read this letter, and immediately went to your house to ask you, Kevin, you looked pale. That is. Sigh. Your inability to answer says it all. It seems Emma was telling the truth. Wait, Mom. Give back all the money I've given you. Wait. Think it over, okay? I don't care anymore. Mom. I'm sorry. As I almost burst out laughing at the desperate exchange between my husband and his straightforward mother, I said, "So, I'm divorcing you, but just so you know, I'll be asking for a division of property without considering your financial situation." My husband was at a loss for words, and on the other end of the phone, his father was laughing, "It's your own fault," while his mother was likely speechless, thinking, "There's no defending him now." Thus, my husband lost the trust of his mother, the support of his father, and me, his wife. All that remained was the debt he owed to his mother. After that, as you know, I'm not mom first. I want to change my ways, let's try again. My husband repeatedly begged for reconciliation, but I naturally refused. The problem wasn't that he prioritized his mother, it was that he was full of lies. Such an untrustworthy man is not suitable as a partner. When I firmly told him this, he seemed deeply shocked and never asked for reconciliation again. The discussion about reconciliation had been muddy, and it was hard to get him to agree to the divorce, but it was successfully finalized. He has to repay the money to his mother and is now desperately working at his new job, which pays less than his previous one, and he is being scolded by younger supervisors. Well, it's a good experience for a pampered husband. His mother has also become distanced from her sister-in-law's family due to this incident. Disgusted, his father started spending less time at home, leading to a much lonelier life than before. Well, she still has her beloved son, hopefully. His affection returns to her. Meanwhile, I started managing a cat cafe with the money I saved from work. Honestly, there's hardly any profit. It's mostly break-even or a loss due to the expenses of caring for rescue cats. But it's fulfilling, and I feel like I'm gaining something more important than money, knowing I'm helping the cats. Although I'm single, the cats are like family to me. That's what I thought. But recently I had a big argument with someone from an NPO doing cat rescue work about strategies to protect cats. Normally, I'd think, I'll never deal with this person again. However, we both deeply care about animals and oddly hit it off. We're not dating, but we've started going out for meals together, and I can feel his kindness. For my birthday, he gave me a cat mug that matches his. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe, just maybe, something could happen. Just kidding. Didn't you see? I've never liked how fake you acted as my sister. My sister, Stacy, began to confess the unbelievable, leaving me speechless. Did she really hate me that much? The days I worked hard to help my sister suddenly seemed meaningless. I'm sorry, I didn't realize. It doesn't matter. Just don't ever get involved with Brian and me again. Here, write this down. It's a pledge. My sister, who had stolen my husband, shoved a piece of paper at me with a triumphant look. It read, "I will no longer have any involvement with us." I signed the pledge, holding back my frustration, not knowing it would come into play in an unexpected way 10 years later. Your sister is seriously ill. As her sister, you should be a donor. Give your liver along to me. I sighed and pulled something out of my bag. It was the pledge I had carried around, anticipating such a situation. The thought that they were probably feeling more frustrated than I had felt back then made me smirk. My name is Hillary. When I was 16, my parents died in a car accident. And my younger sister, Stacy, and I were left completely alone. Fortunately, we managed to receive the insurance money. And by having a relative act as our guardian, we avoided going to an orphanage. However, considering the monthly living expenses, we couldn't afford to waste the insurance money. Just starting high school, I sacrificed all my socializing with classmates and devoted myself to part-time jobs to help with our finances. After graduating high school, I gave up on college and got a job at a local company. Once I started working, life got a bit easier, and I was able to save a little. Stacy wanted to go to college, but she wasn't smart enough to get a scholarship. And she wanted to go to a private university, which was quite expensive. However, I managed to get her into college by using my savings and our parents' insurance money. Hillary, thank you so much. Sorry, I feel bad that I'm the only one who got to attend college. Stacy apologized, but I told her not to worry about it and just enjoy college. Honestly, I would have liked to go to college too. But after our parents died, I didn't have the luxury, and it was a silver lining that at least Stacy could go. People sometimes told me not to sacrifice too much for my sister. But Stacy was my only precious sister in this world. I felt motivated to work hard for Stacy. And even if it meant sacrificing myself, I had no regrets. Afterward, Stacy graduated from college and got a job at a general company. After seeing her settled, I married Brian, a salesman from a client company. We got along well after several meetings, and eventually started dating. We talked about marriage several times during our relationship. But he waited until Stacy had secured a job. Having supported each other as sisters after our parents' death, it finally felt like I could let go of some of the burden once Stacy started working. A year after getting married, our daughter Lauren was born. And I finally felt like I could live my own life. Stacy would sometimes visit us, saying she came to see her niece, but I was a bit concerned that she spent more time with Brian than with Lauren. Then a certain incident confirmed my suspicions. I got a pair of spa trip tickets from a colleague. A spa, huh? That sounds nice. Let's go as a threesome. What? 3? Are you bringing Lauren? Of course. I can't just leave her behind. Lauren is now 7 years old. She has always been a well-behaved and intelligent child, so she wouldn't be a nuisance on the trip. However, Brian seemed uninterested in a trip with a child, no matter how much I explained that Lauren was easy to handle. Brian wouldn't listen. TCH, forget it. Traveling with a kid is just a hassle. Brian bluntly said that and walked away. He was never actively involved in parenting and often behaved selfishly. On weekends, while other families enjoyed leisure time together, Brian would go out with his friends, leaving Lauren and me alone. Eventually, the spa trip was cancelled, and I resigned myself to it as usual. But a month later, an unbelievable truth came to light. Hey, Hillary, here's a souvenir. Stacy visited our home as usual one day and handed me something as a souvenir. It was a common tourist snack, but it was from the destination of the recent spa trip. Stacy, who did you go with? Huh? With Brian. Sorry, he gave me the pair ticket. The spa was really nice. She answered nonchalantly, as if there was nothing wrong with it. With Brian. Why did Stacy go on a trip with just the two of you? Ah, he invited me. It's fine, right? We're family. That's not okay. What are you thinking, going on a trip with someone's husband? Even as I exploded in anger, Stacy was unrepentant, insisting there was nothing wrong with going out as a family. I kicked her out of the house that day and immediately confronted Brian when he returned. It's my ticket, I can do whatever I want with it. I didn't want a trip with a child, but it's a waste not to use it, so I invited Stacy. Brian had told me he was going on a business trip overnight, but he actually went to the spas with Stacy alone. It was clearly a betrayal to me. However, like Stacy, Brian showed no remorse, laughing off my concerns as an overreaction. Don't let jealousy get to you with your sister, it's not a good look. It's not about that. Don't you think it's inappropriate to go on a trip alone with Stacy? Stop yelling. You're being hysterical. Ah, you've ruined my mood. I'm not coming home today. With that, Brian left the house. Whenever something went wrong, he would quickly leave, making any sensible discussion impossible. The next day, I received a call on my cell phone from my mother-in-law. She was rather meddlesome, and honestly, our personalities did not mesh. Brian would contact his mother whenever something happened. I always thought it was problematic that a grown adult couldn't cut the apron strings. Hillary, I heard from Brian that you said some pretty cheeky things. Apologize to your husband properly. As expected, Brian had talked to his mother about our argument. He probably went to her place afterward. With all due respect, Mother, both Brian and Stacy are being incredibly unreasonable. I was outraged by their actions. But my mother-in-law responded with something unbelievable. Your younger sister Stacy is more attractive than you. It's obvious, isn't it? My mother-in-law, who had taken over the company left by my late father-in-law, often scorned me for not having a son and only having a daughter, regularly calling me useless. In fact, Brian also worked at my mother-in-law's company and was expected to take over one day. My mother-in-law criticized me for not quitting my job even after having a family and called me an impossible wife, while Brian agreed with her, saying, "It's really unreasonable, isn't it? Anyway, there are plenty of reasons you're neglected. So you can't complain even if you're thrown out after all your nagging." By then, my mother-in-law unilaterally said her piece and then hung up the phone with a click. Hey, Brian. Why do you report everything to your mom? What? Since you're not handling things well, I've got my own complaints. This is your fault. That night, another argument broke out with Brian. But no matter how much I argued that it was ridiculous, Brian never admitted his faults. I had endured it because of Lauren until now, but this time, the thought of divorce crossed my mind. This man would continue to act as he pleases, disregarding Lauren and me. If left alone, he might eventually cheat with Stacy. No. Perhaps their relationship has already deepened beyond my notice. At that point, I couldn't bear it any longer. I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. When I said this with a strained voice, Brian looked stunned for a moment but then smirked and smiled. I'm totally okay with that. I've had enough of living with you. You keep bugging me, and Lauren doesn't really like me. The reason Lauren doesn't take to him is because he never participated in parenting. However, Brian, shifting the blame, spoke as if Lauren and I were at fault. After that, we began discussions for a divorce. For some reason, my mother-in-law was also present, but I endured it since this would be the last time. and I demanded that Brian pay child support in a lump sum, and that he should not seek any visitation rights. As long as you pay the money, there shouldn't be any complaints. Now I can finally be free. Brian said such frivolous things, but as far as I was concerned, as long as he paid, it was fine. Such a father would be better off not being in Lauren's life, I was convinced. Hey, why don't you marry Stacy after the divorce? She's young and obedient, and you can expect her to bear an heir. Yeah, okay. I'll do that. In front of me, Brian and my mother-in-law gleefully started discussing marrying Stacy. They could do whatever they wanted with marriage or whatever else. But by that time, I would have completely severed ties with my sister. After stamping the divorce papers, I left the house with young Lauren. A few days later, Stacy called me out. It seems she intends to marry Brian. Why? We're the only two sisters, aren't we? Since our parents died, I decided to live by supporting each other with Stacy. As a sister, I didn't mind working for Stacy's sake, even if it meant giving up my own education. I hate how you act so self-righteous, Hillary. It's stupid how you always play the victim. With a look of disgust, Stacy bluntly said that. Didn't you notice? I've always hated how hypocritical you seemed as a sister. That's why I was so happy when I managed to steal Brian away. Stacy began confessing unbelievable things, leaving me speechless. Did she really hate me that much? The days I worked hard to help my sister suddenly seemed meaningless. Sorry, I didn't realize. It's fine, you don't need to apologize, we won't be seeing each other anymore anyway. Just stay out of our lives. Here, write this, it's a pledge. With a triumphant look, Stacy said this to me. On the desk in front of me, there was a pledge stating, I will no longer have any involvement with us. It must have been influenced by my mother-in-law. Silently, I signed the pledge and immediately left the place. We were no longer sisters. It was sad and painful to think that. As a newly single mother, raising young Lauren was hard. Though I received child support, I couldn't touch it for living expenses. Working desperately while leaving Lauren in daycare. Lauren must have felt lonely. Fortunately, even without a father, Lauren grew up healthy and robust. 10 years have passed since then. Lauren became a 17-year-old high school student, diligently studying and participating in club activities. Lauren was always skilled, especially good at drawing, and she would post her illustrations on social media. Lauren has grown up to be a wonderful child. Over the last 10 years, I sometimes thought about whether I did the right thing by getting divorced. But seeing how well Lauren turned out gave me peace of mind that it was the right decision. Meanwhile, I received contact from certain people, Brian and Stacy. Calls had been coming in, but I was busy with work, and more importantly, I had no intention of talking to those two now, so I ignored the calls. But the phone kept ringing incessantly. I want to talk, the voicemail messages increased day by day. But I continued to ignore them until a long email from Brian arrived. The email stated that my sister Stacy was suffering from a serious illness and needed a liver transplant, and they wanted me, Hillary, to be the donor. Stacy is sick. I remembered my sister whom I hadn't seen in 10 years. But I felt no pity, rather anger at being contacted only when convenient. I immediately blocked Brian's contact. In these 10 years, neither Brian nor Stacy had ever reached out to me. Why should I provide an organ for such people? ignoring the contact. A few days later, after finishing work and leaving the office, there were Brian, my mother-in-law, and Stacy, lying in wait. Hillary, why are you ignoring the contact? Aren't you worried about your sister's health? Stacy berated me, her face turning red with anger. Your sister is seriously ill. As her sister, you should be a donor. You're really heartless. Brian and my mother-in-law also yelled loudly. Give your liver along to me. I sighed and pulled something out of my bag. It was the no further involvement pledge that Stacy had made me write 10 years ago. I had carried it around anticipating such a situation. They were momentarily lost for words after seeing the pledge. It was Stacy who had told me not to involve myself. Yet now that she was ill, they had the nerve to come and demand involvement. Then at least help with the medical expenses. According to Stacy, Brian was not working at all. Brian had quit his job to become a novelist all of a sudden. In fact, Brian had not been working since we were married, relying on my income to indulge in gambling. Whenever I criticized his spending habits, Brian would selfishly say, "Don't interfere, woman." But listening to Brian's arguments would instantly ruin our lives. Thinking this, I started giving Brian only the bare minimum of money. But then, Brian would rely on his mother, regularly receiving an allowance from her. Why don't you ask your mother-in-law to take care of the medical bills? It's not really fair to put that on me. Lauren's childcare costs were also paid in one lump sum by the mother-in-law. She's a business owner, she should have plenty of money. Yet, I wonder why they came to me, not having contacted me for 10 years. But, my company is struggling now. The mother-in-law cried out loudly, as if to evoke pity. According to her, the company she ran had faced continuous fraud, completely losing trust from clients and business partners, and it was expected to go bankrupt in a few months. Despite her efforts to revive the company, her son was of no help, and her daughter-in-law, Stacy, who had just been diagnosed with a disease, couldn't help either. The company's performance continued to decline, making a comeback nearly impossible. Meanwhile, Brian's habit of squandering money didn't end. And he had even gambled away the money for Stacy's medical treatment. I never thought he was such a man. Hillary, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Stacy apologized to me in tears. However, looking at her apology, I couldn't bring myself to forgive her. Because she is someone who would recklessly destroy a family with children. There's no way I could just forgive such a sister and offer to donate an organ. The shock of betrayal was even more significant because she was a sister I cherished. I understand your situation. But please leave, all of you. As I said this, the three of them simultaneously raised their voices in discontent. Why? Do I need to explain why? Why should I help you? Who haven't even bothered to visit Lauren in these 10 years? We had our circumstances. You are strangers to me now. We agreed on that 10 years ago. Don't be so cold-hearted. We were family once, let's help each other. Yeah, let it go, let bygones be bygones. How can they suggest we just let things go? While their situation might indeed be severe, I've been working desperately to raise Lauren for the past 10 years too. Both of her biological parents are gone, and I've had almost no one to rely on. I had to raise her well, that was my sole focus. Please stop making convenient requests. Just go back home. I don't even want to see your faces. As I snapped at them, a figure appeared. Mom, what's going on? Who are these people? To my surprise, my daughter Lauren happened to pass by. My company is close to Lauren's school. She must have seen us arguing as she was walking home from school. Lauren, looking concerned, hurried over to me. Lauren, who was only 7 when we divorced, surely wouldn't remember these 3 people. You've grown so much. Do you recognize me? I'm your father. Brian tried to speak familiarly to Lauren. I quickly stepped between them, shielding Lauren. Don't you start playing the father now. Why not? What's wrong with a father wanting to see his daughter? Right, Lauren? I know you've been making quite a bit of money. Brian's words made Stacy and the mother-in-law perk up. Making money? What do you mean? She's still a high school student, isn't she? I saw it on TV by chance. High school students' drawings are incredibly popular on social media. Lauren, that's you, right? Indeed, while still a high school student, Lauren had become a popular illustrator. Her drawings were popular across various age groups, both domestically and internationally, and she was continuously receiving commissions. There had been a TV interview before, which Brian must have seen by chance. Lauren was visibly confused by being approached by these strangers. However, Brian continued speaking without considering Lauren's discomfort. He's a person who always puts himself first. This aspect of him hasn't changed at all since 10 years ago. It doesn't matter about your aunt's medical expenses. Help out your dad. I saw on TV that your illustrations sell for a lot. An excited Brian pressed this demand on Lauren. I shielded her with my back as we moved away. Enough. What do you think you're doing with my precious daughter? Lauren isn't your cash cow. I shouted, protecting Lauren, but Brian was not deterred. Hearing that Lauren had money, Stacy and the mother-in-law also started clamoring for a loan. If you give Brian money, he'll just gamble it all away anyway. Surely human lives are more important, right? Please, Lauren. Help with the medical expenses. It's the company that matters more. Hey, Lauren, lend your grandmother some money. I promise I'll pay it back. Brian, Stacy, and even the mother-in-law threw away all pride and begged on their knees. It's because you inherited my blood, an aspiring novelist, that you succeeded in drawing. It's your duty to support me. Brian went on and on with his nonsense. Despite no longer having the right to call himself a father, he still treated his child as his property. I don't understand what you're saying. I'm not interested in some suspicious cult. With a fierce expression, the 3 of them were definitively rejected by Lauren. Typical of today's kids, Lauren has quite a dry personality. It's okay, Lauren. These people are strangers, you don't have to deal with them. What are you saying? Keep quiet, you heartless woman. I can't just lend money to people I don't know, so excuse us. Mom, let's go. Lauren grabbed my hand and flagged down a taxi that passed by, quickly getting in. What were those people? Their eyes were bloodshot, it was scary. I'm sorry you were scared. I'll always protect you. It would be best to take proper action soon. In the taxi, I took out my smartphone and made a call to someone. There's no way I would let those people exploit Lauren for money. I held Lauren's hand tightly. I called the president of the company where I work. His son is a police officer. And since I knew him well from before, the conversation went smoothly. Even after that, the 3 of them often appeared before me aiming for Lauren's money. If you loiter around me any further, I don't know what might happen. You wouldn't want to end up with a criminal record, would you?" As I said this, the three of them continued to curse at me but reluctantly left. It's unlikely they will appear before me and Lauren again. Stacy's condition has worsened over time, and she has eventually been hospitalized. However, instead of worrying about her, Brian and his mother haven't even visited her. They've completely abandoned her. Finding a liver donor hasn't been successful. And even if one were found, the treatment would likely be very expensive. If Stacy had not betrayed me and we had remained close sisters, I would have been more than willing to give her my organ, but now it's too late for that. Only God knows what's going to happen to Stacy moving forward. Several months later, the mother-in-law's company went bankrupt, leaving behind a substantial amount of debt. There were many unpaid wages, and under the pressure of collections from employees, the mother-in-law sold all her properties and ended up penniless. Even in such dire circumstances, Brian made no attempt to work, and the mother-in-law, finally fed up with such a son, seemingly disowned him. She moved into a small apartment and began living modestly while working as a cleaner. And the most hopeless person was indeed Brian. Riding on the popularity of Lauren, he attempted to publish a tell-all book about our family. If the book gets published, it'll be the end of Lauren's popularity. If you apologize to me and pay up, I might consider stopping the publication. Brian shamelessly tried to blackmail Lauren and me with this despicable demand. However, we were not about to give in to such a base request. Instead, Lauren turned Brian's misdeeds into an illustrated essay and shared it on social media. Far from criticizing her, the public sympathized with Lauren. Thanks to the essay, her reputation even improved, enhancing her visibility as an illustrator. After a while, when I thought Brian had given up, he somehow found out where Lauren and I lived and started showing up at our apartment building to beg for money. Even threatening to call the police didn't stop his persistent visits. "Come on, Hillary. Let me in. I want to talk." However, the security in the apartment building where Lauren and I lived was tight. Even if they came to visit, they couldn't get past the lobby, always being turned away by the doorman or security personnel. It was embarrassing how pathetic they were. But no matter how many times they visited, I had no intention of seeing Brian. After a while, it looked like Brian had stopped trying to see me. But then he tried a different approach. One day, I found a letter from him in my mailbox. The letter was filled with apologies for the past and talked about wanting to support Lauren and me, but it was clear he was just looking to mooch off Lauren's money. The letter was riddled with self-centered, dependent thoughts that utterly disgusted me. Even if we reconciled, there was no way Brian would lead a responsible life. He was an adult and had had plenty of chances to reform. This man would likely never change. He would always depend on others and lead a lazy life. Convinced of this, I tore Brian's letter into pieces and threw it in the nearest trash can. Eventually, I called the police, and Brian, who had been persistently visiting, was taken away for causing a nuisance. He was probably severely reprimanded by the police. After that, Brian stopped visiting us. Years later, Lauren graduated from university and is thriving as an illustrator. In her personal life, things seem to be going well too. She started dating a gentle and kind man introduced by a friend, moved out of the apartment she shared with me, and now lives with her boyfriend. It seems Lauren's boyfriend is the exact opposite of Brian. Perhaps a lesson learned from her father's example. They are diligent and serious young men, and Lauren is planning to get married soon. It looks like you found a good person. When I said this, Lauren blushed shyly. After a while, the newly married couple regularly visited my home to check on me. I always entertained them with dishes resting comfortably on my arm. I'm Susan, a 56-year-old woman. My husband passed away last year due to illness. It was very sad, but I tried to overcome it. Still, whenever I think about the good times we had together, I can't help but cry. My reason for living is my grandchildren. I have 2 daughters. But my younger one, Tracy, is already married. She is 30 years old, with children aged 2 and 3. They are at such a cute age, and I smile every time they come over. I think Tracy has become a good mother. It must be hard to raise children so close in age. But she never complains or shows weakness, which worries me a little. On the other hand, my older one, Katie, is still not married. She works as a company employee and does not live at home. She has been living alone since college and is in the next state. She rarely comes home and always seems to be busy. Actually, Katie and I are not blood related. She is my husband's stepdaughter. My husband had lost his previous wife in an accident. And then, he met me. I can still vividly remember when I met Katie. She was like a little doll, really adorable. She was a bit shy, but gradually she got used to me. However, after that, Katie seemed to change completely. I thought she was regressing because of the baby, my younger sister Tracy. But that wasn't the case. She often caused problems in kindergarten and started being mean to other children in the park. Each time, I had to apologize to the teachers and parents. She started causing more problems in elementary school. So I can't count how many times I went to school. In middle school, she hung out with delinquents in front of stores. Still, she didn't become a delinquent and went on to further her studies. Maybe she was serious in that aspect. Surprisingly, her grades were good. So she went to a decent high school and managed to go to university. Now she works as a company employee. She used to cause problems all the time, but I guess she finally became decent. But it's a bit lonely that she doesn't come home. Maybe she thinks it doesn't matter because I'm not her real mother. Now that her father is gone, she might feel there's no benefit in getting along with her stepmother. Suddenly, Katie came home. "Mom, I'm getting married." "Oh, you're getting married too? That's great. And who is the person you're marrying?" A guy introduced to me by a colleague at work. He's really handsome and tall." "Well, I'd like to meet him." "Is he also a company employee?" "No, he's a part-timer." "What?" "He says he wants to become an actor in the future. He's training for that now. I'll support him until then." I was a bit worried. Of course, I want my daughter to marry someone with a stable job. I wouldn't say a part-timer is bad, but as a parent, I hope for the best. Well, if the two of them can have fun and get along well, that's fine. But when I think about financial matters, I can't help but worry. What are they going to do when they have children? While I was concerned, Katie said this. "Don't worry. I'll manage somehow. If we both work hard, it'll work out." "Is that so? Well then, see ya." Saying that, Katie left. She's not a child, and there's nothing I can do about my worries. Maybe he'll look for a stable job if it comes to it. Or maybe he'll become a successful actor. I thought I should stop being too interfering. Several months passed and I received a call from Tracy. Hey, did you get an invitation to my sister's wedding? Not yet. I haven't received it either. But a classmate of hers said she got it. Could it be a mistake? Do people not send invitations to relatives? Some people might do that, but I wonder what happened. I'll ask her. Katie's classmates have already received invitations. But neither my younger sister Tracy nor I, her mother, have received them. I wondered why. Maybe she's planning to handle it through a line for relatives. So, I called her. Hello, you're having a wedding, right? I haven't received an invitation. When and where is it? Where will you live after that? Why would I tell you? I didn't plan to invite you anyway. What? Did you think you'd be invited? I won't share personal information with a fake mother. Since you're not the real mother, I don't care if you don't come. I won't tell you where the new house is either. Oh, that's too bad. I was happy that you came home and told me about your marriage. Oh, that was because I had other business. I didn't come to see you. Is that so? Then let's be strangers from now on. I'll gladly do that. Katie said that and hung up the phone. I felt incredibly empty. I raised her like my real daughter since she was little, but this treatment is too much. She has caused various troubles, and I have been worried sick about her. But it seems she has forgotten all that. It was really sad. But I decided to stop dealing with her. It turns out we were disliked after all. I didn't hate my sister. Tracy said regretfully. Tracy was a really kind child. Even when she was bullied by her sister Katie as a child, she didn't cry or make a fuss. Is it really bad not being blood related? I don't think that matters in today's world. Yes, you're right, Tracy. People do adopt and raise less fortunate children, don't they? That's exactly it. I came back home today because... Wait, what? I'm thinking of adopting a child. I want a third child, and my husband. And I have been talking about adopting from a facility for a while. I went to visit the facility recently and made up my mind. I want to be useful to society and live for a child who needs a mother. Tracy. Of course, I'll take good care of the two children I'm already connected to by blood. But I'll make absolutely sure that the third, whom I'll adopt through a special adoption arrangement, will be happy. Tracy was saying this with sparkling eyes. She has always loved children. And was so fond of them that she used to work as a nursery teacher. Now, she's not working due to her parenting duties and might remain a housewife. She seems to be set on adopting a third child, and I thought I'd show my support. Some parents might not agree, but I believe it's a great thing to do. Mom supports you and your husband's decision. So, do your best. Yes. I'll give you all of my inheritance, Tracy. What? Use it for the children. Don't worry, I have a survivor's pension. So, I transferred all my assets to Tracy. As a lifetime gift. I handed over the money I had saved during my single years. I also sold my jewelry for money. In my youth, I was a career woman. I had saved up money and bought luxury rings and necklaces. But I no longer need to show them off to anyone. So I thought of converting them into money and giving it to Tracy. This way, I've given Tracy hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a considerable amount of money, but I didn't mind. If it's for my adorable grandchildren, I felt this was just fine. One day, Katie came to the house. She had become plump like a furious goddess. Mom. You gave all your assets to Tracy. Yes, I thought it would be for the sake of Tracy's children. Why would you do that? That's terrible. Why didn't you give me any? Because you and I are strangers, aren't we? You're just a fake mom, aren't you? So, why would I even want to inherit anything from someone who's fake? That's different. Money is money. Now, give me whatever is left. There's nothing left. I've given it all away. All I have now is Dad's survivor's pension. If I'm careful, that alone is enough to live on. I don't need to dress up lavishly like I used to when I was young. So, I can manage with just the pension. What? You're being spiteful. Then give me that survivor's pension. Katie was screaming loudly. But obviously, I couldn't give her the survivor's pension. I wouldn't be able to survive without it. Maybe I should get a part-time job to earn more money for the living expenses. However, before my husband died, my legs got worse and it became difficult to walk. It also hurts to stand, and even sitting, my legs go numb, making office work impossible. But it's not bad enough to get a disability certificate. It's just sciatic nerve pain and joint discomfort. I have nothing more to give you. Probably, there will be nothing even when I pass away. Huh? If there's even a little bit left in the bank account from the survivor's pension, I'll take that as an inheritance. I don't think that's possible. Because you forged my will, didn't you? You found my handwritten will, opened it without permission, and switched its contents, right? Well. You've really messed things up. Well, your statutory share will be completely lost too. What? I didn't know much about it either, but forging a will is not allowed. It leads to disqualification from inheritance. What do you mean? It means you can't receive any inheritance at all. Normally, even under various circumstances, a statutory share is recognized. But if you forge or destroy a will, you lose your statutory share too. In other words, you get nothing. What? Katie screamed so loudly she nearly fell backwards. I wasn't very knowledgeable myself, but a lawyer friend taught me about it. Actually, when Katie came to report her marriage, something felt off. She wandered into my room on her own, and afterwards, the arrangement of things had changed. That made me suspicious. I had hidden the will somewhere, written for when I pass away someday. She had opened it without permission. Moreover, she had switched the contents. She might think she did it right, but it's pretty clear once you see it. The seal was done poorly, so I had a hunch. Opening it on your own is also not allowed. You've done it now. But I didn't know. I just hoped Mom would give me more. Such ignorance can be scary. I don't know everything either. But you'd think you could at least distinguish between what's right and wrong. I don't know everything either. Even at this age, there are things I'm learning for the first time. But I like to think that I can at least discern right from wrong as a person. Katie couldn't do that. Thinking only of herself, she forged and tampered with the will. It's absurd to think she could do such a thing under normal circumstances. I wondered where I went wrong in raising her. I loved and raised Katie just as much as I did my own daughter, Tracy. And yet, Katie caused me endless trouble. I tried my best to really connect with her, to become a real family. But it seems my efforts were in vain. To Katie, I must have been a stranger from the start. The thought makes me feel pathetic and frustrated, an indescribable feeling. But I realized I could no longer love Katie. She called me a fake mom, didn't invite me to her wedding, and then forged the will. I was so appalled that I lost all affection for her. Well, that's why you need to go to prison, you know. What? Because you forged a personal document. Well, I have to report this. Wait a minute. Please don't do that. I immediately reported her to the police. Tracy also came to help. She kept watch to make sure Katie didn't escape. With my bad legs, I wouldn't be able to chase after her if she ran. Tracy, being tall and quick on her feet, could easily catch up even if carrying a child. She has always been athletic, with the strength of a boy. Stop it. Stop. Look, Katie, the police are here. Let's have them take you away. No. I hate the police. This will make my husband divorce me. That's not my problem, Katie. You did something wrong. Where will we meet next? In court? Or maybe in prison during a visit? Wah! Katie was crying loudly, but she was taken away by the police. Just before being put in the police car, she looked like a dog being pulled on a leash. After that, Katie was convicted for forging the will. I heard it's rare to get caught by the police and sentenced for such a thing. But perhaps the malice involved was recognized. Maybe they considered the fact that she opened it without permission. Consequently, Katie was sentenced to imprisonment. It seems quite severe since not many crimes like fraud or vandalism result in immediate imprisonment. I heard from the neighbor that her car was intentionally damaged, but it ended with a settlement. So, forging a will must be considered a particularly serious offense. Later, Katie went to prison. Of course, her part-timer husband abandoned her. Katie had not received any lifetime gifts from me, and she had no money. The money she earned at her company was squandered by her husband at casinos. And she herself was also wasteful. I bought many luxury items when I was young because my annual salary was $90,000. So I could afford a $3,000 bag every 6 months. But Katie was different. She worked an office job at a small company, barely making $2,000. So, between her husband's gambling expenses, her hobbies, and living costs, she had no savings. Since then, Katie has been released. She's divorced, broke, and jobless. So she came asking to stay with me. But I firmly refused. Hey, Mom, help me. Let me live with you. No, you're neither my daughter nor anything to me anymore. Please leave. But, Mom, you've started a new job recently, right? It's profitable, isn't it? Then you can support me, right? Please, let me stay here. I don't care about you. I've disowned you already. That means we're legally strangers now. What? Even if I die, you won't get any inheritance from me. Honestly, I should have done this much sooner. No. I really should have cut ties with you when you called me a fake mom. I was just too busy to handle it then. In fact, I started a work-from-home job. It doesn't require sitting for long. And I can do it while lying down using a tablet. It's been quite profitable. And I plan to give this money to Tracy's family. She has already adopted a third child. And I'm donating my earnings to NPOs. From now on, I want to earn a lot and contribute to society rather than spending it on myself. Katie left crying, but I felt relieved. From now on, I plan to live the rest of my life for others, for society. You have no home to return to, no parents to devote yourself to. And yet you dare sleep soundly while leaving your father-in-law's funeral for me to handle. Who do you think married you, you ungrateful wretch? My mother-in-law, looking like a demon, confronted me. So, I've already explained that I couldn't go out. Do you realize how long I've been taking care of a naive person like you? Ned, you should divorce such a woman soon. My mother-in-law said this to my husband Ned by my side. I understand. I never thought we would say goodbye this way. But thank you for everything. My name is Sandra, and I turned 45 this year. My parents died when I was young. Now, I live with my husband Ned, whom I married at the age of 35. His parents' house is about a 10-minute drive away. And it has become my routine to stop by there after work every day. To take care of my father-in-law. The family consists of my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and my brother-in-law Tony. However, my mother-in-law is busy with her leisure activities. And Tony is busy with his sales job, so no one at their home takes care of my father-in-law. That's why, as a caregiver, I was chosen to look after him during a family meeting without me. Ned tried to protect me until the end, confronting my mother-in-law and Tony. However, they tried to force Ned to live with my father-in-law. Then, I suggested that I could visit their home to help. And we managed to avoid living together. Ned also helps take care of him on his days off. My father-in-law became bedridden due to illness. On the first day of taking care of him, my mother-in-law said, "From today, please take good care of him. His room is on the second floor. And you can use anything in the house as you like." I greeted my mother-in-law and went to my father-in-law's room on the second floor. I felt something was off. Most people set up a room on the first floor for home care. But his room was on the second floor. And there was a foul smell even before entering the room. I bravely opened the door, but it was not in a state for care. Diapers used by my father-in-law were scattered around. And he seemed to have not been properly taken care of. The clothes he was wearing smelled as if they had been worn for days. I couldn't believe they would leave him in such a condition. I brought a broom and dustpan and finished cleaning while taking care of my father-in-law. He thanked me many times. It was hard. But seeing his happy face made all the fatigue go away. When I went downstairs, my mother-in-law was there. As I was about to leave, she said, "What's for dinner tonight?" It's been a while since we didn't need to eat out. She was asking me to prepare meals for their home, not just provide care. Surprised, I looked at her, and she continued, "Or is it okay if your father-in-law suffers while you're not here?" Was she implying that she would harm my father-in-law if I didn't obey? She looked at me with a malicious gaze. I wanted to fight back. But remembering my father-in-law earlier, I thought it best to endure for his sake. So, I said to her, "If I do the housework, you won't do anything to my father-in-law, right?" She seemed very pleased and said, "Of course. Now, please clean the rest of the rooms on the second floor. After that, cook dinner." "Thank you. And take care of Coco too." Coco is a cat that my mother-in-law adores. From then on, I took care of the housework at their home in addition to taking care of my father-in-law. Coco was relaxing in her favorite spot. I prepared her litter and food. And finally, my mother-in-law allowed me to go home. She warned me as I left. "Think carefully about what would happen to your father-in-law if you tell Ned about today." It was very late when I left their house, and Ned had already returned home. Then, Ned said to me, "From now on, your return will be late because of taking care of my father, right? If so, I'll start cooking dinner from today." So Sandra, please take care of my father. One day, on his day off, Tony said to me, Sandra, your cooking is always the same. And I'm a bit tired of it. I felt like a free housemaid. For several years, I took care of my father-in-law alone. He repeatedly thanked me for taking care of him. Tony didn't involve himself at all with my father-in-law. Instead, he would ask my mother-in-law, Mom, can you give me about $1,000 today? And she would comply, saying, Sure, Tony. You're an adult, so you should spend that much. A few days later, my father-in-law passed away. I had discussed the funeral with my mother-in-law and Tony before he died. But both had the same response. My mother-in-law said, Just burial is fine for him. It's a waste to spend money on a standard funeral. And Tony, who was watching TV, said, I'll use that inheritance to go on a trip with the girl I'm targeting. However, Ned and I wanted to have a funeral for my father-in-law. We discussed it the day he died and decided on the funeral company. But that night I developed a high fever. I thought it was from the shock. But at the hospital, it was confirmed that I had COVID-19. We did what we could in advance, and Ned helped too. Considering public opinion, we asked my mother-in-law to serve as the chief mourner at the funeral. Even then, she said, A funeral for him? What a waste. Who's going to pay for it? I won't be taking it out of the inheritance, to which I responded. We don't need the inheritance from my father-in-law. We'll cover the funeral expenses. So please don't worry. Hearing this, my mother-in-law, realizing it wouldn't cost her anything, seemed very pleased and said, Well, if that's the case, make sure you don't bill us later. Ned apologized, saying, It's Dad's funeral, so I'll pay. I'm sorry to always be a burden on you, Sandra, but I told him. Don't worry. I want to see him off too. However, due to COVID-19, not only was my father-in-law's funeral delayed, but I also couldn't leave the house for several days, leaving the rest to my mother-in-law and Tony. Fortunately, since Ned had been away on a business trip for about 2 weeks, there was no risk of transmission from me. But he had to go straight from the airport to the funeral. I heard from Ned that my mother-in-law had managed the funeral smoothly. After recovering from COVID-19, I visited their home with Ned. I apologized to my mother-in-law for not being able to attend the funeral, and asked if I could see my father-in-law's room. She responded kindly. Different from her usual self, perhaps because Ned was there. Don't worry about it. By the way, there's something in my husband's room I want to show Ned. Sandra, come with me, and Ned, please wait here. When we went upstairs, I deeply regretted not being able to fully take care of my father-in-law until the end and paused. Snapping back to reality, I looked up to find my mother-in-law with a demonic expression yelling, After all the trouble I went through at the funeral, why are you so carefree? And suddenly pushed me, causing me to tumble down the stairs. She continued, You have no home or parents to devote to. Yet who do you think married you, you ungrateful wretch? However, she noticed Coco, her beloved cat, was behind me and screamed, Coco, it's dangerous. Get away from there, but I fell on Coco. She then pushed me aside, almost unconscious, and rushed to Coco, who was not moving. Hearing the noise, Ned came and asked, Sandra, are you okay? That's all I remember before losing consciousness. Apparently, Ned carried me to the hospital. The next day, after regaining consciousness, I was told I needed to stay in the hospital for a week for further tests. During his visits, Ned, believing my mother-in-law's words, said, "Mom told me you missed a step on the stairs." I was conflicted about telling Ned that my mother-in-law had pushed me. After successfully passing all tests, I was discharged. But I was still troubled and hadn't come to a decision. On the day of my discharge, Ned, who had come to pick me up, said while driving, "I'm glad nothing happened to you, but I was really worried. Also, do you remember that Coco was trapped under you?" Of course. I couldn't forget. Coco had been taken to a vet and was badly injured. Still not recovered, and was resting at home. As we talked and arrived at their home, Ned said, "I don't understand. But Mom says she wants to apologize to you. Also, Coco doesn't go near her anymore. Before, she always stayed by Mom's side, but now she growls if Mom approaches. So, Tony is taking care of her at least." Following Ned, I entered the house where my mother-in-law was present. For some reason, ignoring Ned next to her, she lunged at me with a terrifying expression. Surprised, I stepped back, and suddenly, the doorbell rang. When we opened the front door, there stood a man in a suit. He handed us his business card, which had the name of a law firm on it. My mother-in-law, though surprised, led the lawyer to the living room. There, the lawyer, my mother-in-law, Tony, Ned, and I sat down. The lawyer began, "Nice to meet you. I was requested by your father to discuss the inheritance with the family after his passing. First, regarding the inheritance. It has been decided that all of it will go to Ned. Several properties have already been transferred to Ned's name." He stated matter-of-factly as he read from my father-in-law's will. We were shocked as we had never heard such a thing from my father-in-law. According to the lawyer, my father-in-law's properties were very valuable, totaling a 7-figure inheritance. My mother-in-law and Tony had been looking forward to the inheritance. But their faces turned pale the moment they heard that Ned would inherit everything. The lawyer continued. Until a few years ago, he was planning to distribute the inheritance equally among you, including his wife and son. However, over the past 2 years, he became aware of the squandering by his wife and son, and decided to leave his assets to Ned, whom he could trust. I remember he looked sad when he made this change. The lawyer explained that my father-in-law knew they were counting on his property. My mother-in-law, frustrated, snatched the will from the lawyer and yelled, "This is troubling. We were counting on that inheritance. Now I can't even buy luxury bags or go on social trips. My reputation will be ruined. You must be a fake lawyer, right? You're in cahoots with this woman, trying to take all our property." "I won't fall for that," and Tony chimed in. "I promised my girlfriend I'd buy her an apartment. Without the inheritance, I can't pay the mortgage." Without a word, the lawyer pulled out a voice recorder. He played it back, and we heard my mother-in-law's voice saying, "My husband is just in the way. Although Sandra is taking care of him, his property belongs to you and me. Sandra is also happy serving us by doing the caregiving and housework," and Tony's voice, "Dad's lucky. He has a free servant doing everything, right? Ned did well to marry such an ugly woman. I want a free servant too. Someone who doesn't demand luxury items, doesn't cost much, and doesn't complain." Ned looked at me in shock and said, "Sandra, why didn't you tell me? If I had known you were going through this, I would have stopped you from coming here long ago." Mom, to think you felt this way about Dad and Sandra. Honestly, I don't even want to think of you as a parent. The attack on Sandra earlier. That was because you thought she would tell me, right? To this, my mother-in-law retorted, "It's all Sandra's fault. She deceived my husband and you. And even hurt Coco." Despite my hardships at the funeral, the relatives only praise her. Who does she think she is, not even attending the funeral? And now, she's scheming with the lawyer to monopolize his estate. Wake up, Ned. Come here, Coco. However, Coco hissed at my mother-in-law from beside me. "Coco, what's wrong? Mama's here, why are you acting like this?" It seemed my mother-in-law was deeply saddened by Coco's behavior. I've been the one taking care of Coco all along. She prefers those who care for her. And remember, I explained that I couldn't go out because of COVID, I said. My mother-in-law glared at me and said to Ned, who was by my side, "You see how naive she is? You should divorce her soon." I understand. I never thought we'd say goodbye like this. But thank you for everything, Ned replied. Hearing this, my mother-in-law had a triumphant look on her face. Ned continued. Mom, Uncle, and Aunt know how well Sandra has been caring for Dad. They even kindly told me they'd help if it got too hard. I thought you and Tony were supporting Sandra, but she kept quiet not to worry me. Since this house is now in my name, you and Tony need to leave. I can't be family with someone who doesn't cherish Sandra. Maybe Coco feels the same. Thus, my mother-in-law was forced to leave the house by her own son, Ned. Encouraged by Ned and Coco, I asked the lawyer, "Can I sue my mother-in-law for everything she's done? Including pushing me down the stairs?" The lawyer, smiling warmly, which was unlike his usual expressionless face, replied, "I've heard about this from your father-in-law. He said if you ever came to him for help, he wanted me to be there for you. So please, rest assured and leave it to me." With ample evidence available, we filed a complaint and submitted medical reports from my fall down the stairs. With the lawyer's help, my mother-in-law had to pay me a significant amount in medical expenses in one lump sum. She tried to take Coco with her when she left, but Coco continued to hiss at her, making it difficult. It seemed more painful for her to part from Coco than being kicked out of the house. We moved out of the apartment we had been living in and into Ned's family home, deciding it was best for Coco to stay in a familiar environment. Ned, using the real estate inherited from his father, rented it out at reasonable rates. The medical fees from my mother-in-law amounted to 6 figures. With the money received, Ned, Coco, and I indulged ourselves at a luxury hotel that accommodates pets. Coco's severe injuries healed, and she was livelier than before, jumping high and chasing toys. I turned my father-in-law's memorable room into Coco's room, installing a cat tower and remodeling other parts of the house for a cat tunnel for her. Recently, I heard from relatives that my mother-in-law and Tony are living in a small, old apartment. Tony's reckless spending hasn't changed, and he's unable to pay his rent properly. The women at the company he was courting, who liked him for his spending, have become disillusioned with his poorer appearance and tighter wallet and have left him. Tony had also bought luxury watches on loan, which he had to sell to pay back the loans. My mother-in-law was deeply saddened by Coco's hostility and had to borrow money from loan sharks for my medical expenses, leaving her under surveillance and working tirelessly day and night. Recently, Ned's phone has been receiving voicemails from my mother-in-law and Tony, saying, "Lend us money or we'll die," from public phones. But Ned has been careful not to answer. Our family also saw a new addition, a little friend named Felix. who moved in with us when we relocated to Ned's family home. Felix was already friendly with Coco and had settled in by himself. He was about a year and a half old, as confirmed by the vet. This experience has made me realize that even if Ned becomes bedridden like his father, I will never become like my mother-in-law. Ned has truly supported and believed in me through this ordeal, and I will support him to the very end. We want to continue living happily with Ned, Coco, and Felix.